Oh, there it is.
Hey everybody, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I'm your host, Andrew Davis, and this episode is brought to you by my sponsors. It is an affiliate link. It is BCW Supplies. Use code POPANIMECOMICS to get 10% off your entire order. Please use the code. It supports this show. Inflation kind of sucks. Bags and boards are very, very important in that regard. It supports this show. Inflation kind of sucks. Bags and boards. And that was not supposed to happen, but it did. So I don't know if anybody caught that, but as I was stating, obviously use the code, guys. Super helpful in that regard, as well as this is my shirt on Redbubble. You can go buy that as well. So check that out. 16 different colors. And I do have a Substack and class dropping relatively soon, talking about comic book investing. And so if you want to learn how to invest and make money with comic books, I teach the fundamentals and I teach the basics. So go check that out. And basically the entire class is going to be available on October 5th. So enough of my sponsors and all that fun stuff, as I do have with me Tyrone Jackson from Sovereign Comics. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited to have you back. And I think this is either your fourth, fifth, or sixth time at this point. I don't even remember at this point. It's been a while. It's been a long 3 years.
Yeah,
3 years, guys.
Yeah, I'm most definitely a repeat guest to your show now. Definitely a repeat guest. I do think it's probably about 4 or 5. I think it's about 4 or 5. Because I think the last time.
We've gone through Sovereign, we've gone through the basics, we've gone into some details with certain stuff, and I definitely want to focus on 2 of the books because I think they relate to each other rather well, and that is Cypher Team and Temple High. As kind of Temple High leads into Cypher Team, and Cypher Team does sort of refer back to Temple High, and they kind of play off each other to some degree. But before we get into all of that, I do want to catch everybody up on what is Sovereign Comics for those that are unfamiliar with it, are hearing about it for the first time, because obviously people come in and out of my show at various points. So what's the basic premise of your company? And we don't have to give like the 9-hour speech.
Don't worry. I'll keep it short. Okay, so Sovereign Comics is an interconnected comic book universe that prides itself on telling dynamic and diverse stories with incredibly dope characters. While I do have diverse characters, I am the type who likes to keep story first. So story will always be first in my comics before anything else. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, I mentioned 2 titles already. You have 5 so far.
Yep. There's 4 titles on the comic book side, which are Cypher Team, Alpha, Temple High, which are the 2 that you mentioned, Stars, and Iyamo Stigmata. And just recently, I stood up different ecosystems of Sovereign Comics. So the 4 titles that I mentioned earlier is Sovereign Orange. Then I have Sovereign Mangaka. I also have Sovereign 1. Sovereign Mangaka, of course, is going to be where all the manga is made. Sovereign 1 is going to be for anyone who wants to publish a book and maybe wants to get under Sovereign Comics to do so, but they don't want their characters or their stories to be connected to Sovereign Orange, which is the main universe. That is where they will go, is to Sovereign 1. There's also Sovereign Cub, which will be on the way soon. I actually have a friend who has their doctorate in education, so we're going to be talking and going back and forth to try to make that incredibly, pretty much what I wanted to be, just like a stepping stone for the youth, early literacy and stuff like that. So we're going to be working on that with Sovereign Cub. And then also the Sovereign Black, which is the area for all of the darker, more adult type stories that can't be told in Sovereign Orange. But Sovereign Mangaka has Orisha Exos. Say again.
It's DC Black label.
Pretty much. Yeah, which was funny because when they came out with DC Black, I was like, well, dang, because I had already named Sovereign Black. Like I added that name for like a year, and then they came out with DC Black, and I'm like,
so let's even talk about this, because this is one of the things that's interesting. And obviously, I mean, I don't have divisions in my business as far as this podcast, but in how I function, I have a variety of different businesses. and different umbrellas. And so I'm very curious, what was this like really setting this up? Because I think this is a big mistake that a lot of creators make and people in comics make, is that they're running their comics as a hobby. They're not running it
Mhm,
like a business. They're also
mhm,
not understanding what their IP is. And they're
mhm,
also not understanding how to build a world and also how
mhm.
to put things in what I call an umbrella policy.
Yeah,
Because you can centrally manage your business, but you don't want a not safe for work book in your cub book, for instance, because there's a bunch of reasons why you don't want a 5-year-old reading about nudity. Just in general, it's usually
exactly,
not a good mix. And then
exactly.
secondly, you might want to get into a school or into
Mhm,
Scholastic or a book fair, and the
mhm,
last thing you want is that connotation, or maybe connotation is not the right word, but I think everybody knows what the word I'm trying to think of
mhm.
is, of being associated with a nudity. And so,
Right.
what is it like to really build this out? Because I think this is one of the things that's fascinating about
Mhm.
what you're doing, and it's something that I think a lot of people in comics are missing, per se.
Yeah. Well, it was mainly for what you said, because like I knew with Sovereign Orange, one of the things that I was trying to figure out when I started that is what age groups would it hit, you know? For me, I let my son read it. My daughter, she loves stars. She just loves the characters and stuff like that. She can't read yet, just started kindergarten yesterday, so she'll be reading soon. But my son has read all my books, Yamo Stigmata, which is right now probably the darkest comic that I have that's out. Um, but um, I leave it up to the parent, like the parental adversary, like as a advisory as a parent, is up to you on what you want your child to read. However, I knew that may not be the case sometimes. Like some parents are just, oh, it's a comic book, pick it up, and then they give it to their kid, and then it's like you got this ninja stabbing someone in the chest, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want my kid reading that. So for Sovereign Orange, I always said the age limit 13 and up. But if a parent is okay for their kid to read it and their kid's 10 or 7 or 8, or they read it to them, then by all means, that's the parent's choice. So that's the reason why I created Cub, why I wanted to do Cub. Cub was like always in my head. Even when I first kicked everything out, like I have a story that I created when I was creating everything else. That's gonna be in Sovereign Cub, and that's gonna be more for the kids that are like, the ones who were like in fourth, fifth, sixth grade, like in that area, maybe even seventh, depending on, on their age and their parents. But it starts off with early literacy, learning ABCs, the sounds that the letter makes, all of the other stuff, and then it slowly moves up into more advanced reading, and then you can cross over into Sovereign Orange and keep going. So,
So, did you even feel that also there gets to a point, because this is one of the things that me and Chuck Dixon a while back were speaking
mhm,
about. One of the
mhm,
worst things that happened for comics, there are two things in my opinion. He threw one of them out to me that sort of convinced me, is comics became very inaccessible.
mhm,
Where comics used to be at the checkout line in the grocery store,
yeah,
and little 7-year-old kid would go shopping with his mom because she doesn't want to hire a babysitter,
mhm,
and he was good during the entire trip, and so he would get a comic for $1 or maybe even $2,
mhm,
and it was an access point. And maybe that comic wasn't exactly perfect for his age level, but it wasn't bad for his age level either.
mhm,
And you feel that even tabling the early literacy element of it, also the indoctrination of what a comic is, because I feel
yep,
like that's the biggest problem comics
yeah,
face.
yeah,
And look, I'm not an education specialist. I don't know what early child literacy looks like, but
mhm,
I do understand the business of comics. Where if we get 7-year-old little Johnny reading comic books, and then he's intrigued, and then he's reading them, and then for 4 or 5 years, there's going to be a point where if you get a million of those kids, maybe 90% of them leave, but
mhm,
100,000 stay. And I
exactly.
think that's one of the biggest problems that comics is facing. Because let's be realistic, I'm 29. I don't know how you are,
Mhm.
how old you are, but
Uh,
it's us who are buying comics
yep,
right now. It's not
yeah,
just 7-year-olds.
I'm putting this out here. If y'all, when y'all watch, I'll be 39 in September.
But you get my point, is that
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
us
yeah. I do.
at comic shops. When was the
Yeah,
last time you saw like a 12-year-old in a comic shop? I mean,
not
it
at all.
doesn't happen. I mean, I've seen it, but it's not massive.
Yeah, and then if they're in there, they're usually not picking up at least from what I've seen. Whenever I go in the shops, they're usually not picking up a comic unless their parent is introducing them to a comic. They're typically going after the card games or the Funko Pops or the manga. Like for instance, I went to a con like manga. For anyone in the comic world that says that manga is not destroying comics right now, you are doing yourself a disservice and not telling yourself the truth. Because the last con I went to, like you remember Arisha Exos, I think one of the first shows I did with you, Arisha Exos was a comic at one point. For those who didn't know, I did have it in comic book format. Um, I always felt like it should have been a manga, but I didn't want to intrude into manga making, so I made it a comic. But eventually, I would probably around September of 2021, I just went ahead and pulled the trigger, because I already announced that Cyber Mangaka was coming out. So I was like, you know what, let me go ahead and pull the trigger. And I just totally refurbished redid everything. And hold on, sorry, real quick. Sorry, that was a little one. But yeah, so like I pulled the trigger in September and was like, okay, finally gonna make it a manga, fully refurbished the guts of the comic, redid everything, and told myself, I'm gonna make it a manga, I'm gonna make it right to left read, I'm gonna make it traditional the way it should be. Did all of that, got it printed. Actually was able to get it into a subscription box and called Otaku Noir in December. So that was like the first introduction of it. And then the recent con I went to, a KaiCon in Tennessee, like quite literally that book sold out. It was gone. Like everybody wanted it. It was just, they're like, oh, you got a manga? Gimme. Or they'll just because it was a manga, they would get it. Or
This is interesting because I think that there's a real divide right now where
Mhm,
I think manga is really big. I think that there's all these people who know what manga is,
mhm.
but also I think that there's a whole other side where it's also saying that there is a huge collectible market still.
Yeah.
And so when we actually look at and we dive into this, and this is my area of expertise,
Mhm.
and I know everybody in comics is now an expert. Um, but
Not
one
if
of the
they
things is
haven't
that
researched.
yeah, right. But one of the things is that if you look at collectible covers and limited
Yeah.
covers,
Mhm.
manga hasn't figured out how to do that on a value level yet.
Very true.
And that's one of the things that when we actually dive into it on sales and pure sales and
Mhm.
also popularity, that's an issue. But you also look at artists and
Yeah.
other things. There are artists that no matter what you put their cover on, it will sell.
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
it's a very interesting thing when you dive into it. And I still think that there's more money in comics
Mhm.
and in actual comic books right now than
Very,
there is in manga, but not
very.
in sales collectively.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that, but it's a big debate. It's a huge debate, technically.
Mm, yeah, I mean, I can see it on both. Like honestly, like clearly I make comics, so I want comics to sell. I don't think comics are fully gone. They're here, and there are people that love them. People that love the variants. There's people who don't like variants. But with manga, I think the reason why manga ultimately is doing better is their storytelling. Um, they have a beginning, middle, and end in many cases. Actually, in 100% of the cases, because even with Dragon Ball and One Piece, well, One Piece is probably the longest one I think right now. But even with Dragon Ball, Z, Super, regular Dragon Ball, everything else, um, it changes. So like the story will change. So to go to end, the story will change. But it keeps going. Whereas like with comics, is like it'll go tell its arc, recycle, and then it tells you the arc that it told you 2 arcs ago, but with different characters. So a lot of people are looking at there and they're like,
Yeah.
I just read this, but you had different characters. So that thing that's one reason why a lot of people are kind of moving towards indie also. But with manga, like I said, it's because of the storytelling, the underdog storytelling, the character growing and stuff like that. So people want to see that more and feel like they're actually being brought into the book. But as far as like collecting, yeah, as far as like collecting, I know that manga, what they do, at least from what I've seen, because typically a manga is black and white. Really, full manga being full color is, I think, more of an American thing. However, um, in manga, like for their collector ones, at least the ones that I've seen, they may do the book and then they'll say, "Hey, the first 5 pages of this manga is in color." And so we're only selling this amount, and so people will run to get that colored version, whereas like the first 5 pages are in color, but everything's black and white, and people will go and get that, and that'd be like the collector version, and then they'll buy the black and white one too. So that's kind of how they do theirs. Since the interior is black and white, they'll do it with colored interior pages, whereas we do it with covers, So
It's a very interesting thing
mhm.
because I do realize that manga. And look, I'm a manga guy. I like
Yeah, yeah,
comics. I like anime, but I also think that that has been hyperbolated
hmm
extremely. Where in
hmm
sales in places like Barnes and Noble and Amazon, it's clearly evident that manga has surpassed graphic novel
yeah,
sales. But
yeah.
also, this is what people are comparing it to: is that they're saying, well, manga is beating comics, and well, the way I view a comic is I view a single floppy,
Okay, I
versus,
can see that.
a
Yeah,
graphic novel, because a graphic novel market is a whole different audience.
yeah,
Somebody who's into graphic novels is not into a floppy per se. They can be, but for the most part, there is some crossover, but there's also a big difference, and it's a
yeah.
whole big thing. And I
Because
also think, yeah,
but you do
what's
have
it?
a point. You do have a point though, because when I notice like folks who are at least the folks that I've met and dealt with at cons, who are more into graphic novels, but they might give my floppy a chance because most of my floppies are thick, like 30 pages, 30, 40 pages, stuff like that. So they'll give it a chance because it's more. But from what I've learned for the graphic novel lovers, most of them, instead of buying a floppy, they'll just buy the trade, or they'll wait till Omnibus comes out and they'll just buy that because they're just used to this super thick story that is told in one sitting rather than, oh, I buy this issue, wait for it, buy this issue, wait for it. But there are some people who still like the floppies. Like I still like floppies when it comes to certain stories because I want to collect them. That's the collector in me is like, oh, I got to get the whole thing. So
It's also different where it's the idea that you want it first and foremost.
yeah,
Everything in indie now, and technically every comic is limited.
hmm
Now that limit could be 50,000 copies,
yeah,
but it is limited. And 50,000 copies is still a small number considering how many people are in the
hmm
world. But
yes,
one of the things that is really interesting, and I think it's just fascinating what's going on with everything, and even just that, and you know, it's such an interesting world. But I want to even go further into your business a little bit before we dive into the comic side, because this is the other thing is that you left Kickstarter,
hmm
and I got a lot of flack when I started talking about this about 18 months ago,
hmm
and I was talking about places like ClickFunnels, and I was
yeah,
saying, yo, you could use ClickFunnels for crowdfunding. You can use other things. You could create your own funnel because that's what Indiegogo is. That's what Kickstarter is. It is a funnel with multiple exits presented to you, and it is
hmm
not a downward or an upwards funnel, which
right,
means that you present an offer and then you bring somebody to option A or option B, and
right,
then you give them option C, and you bring them down through 15 different offers.
hmm
But you're presenting them, and so you could have a funnel where you're collecting somebody's email for a free comic, and then you say, "Hey, wait, before you go, next 15 minutes, you can get this book in physical copy for $10."
right,
That's a downward funnel. And
exactly,
now everybody in the entire industry right now is saying, I'm sick of Kickstarter. I'm driving traffic to it anyway, or I'm sick
yeah,
of Indiegogo. Let me run my own thing and let me keep, you know, 7% instead of giving it to Kickstarter or Indiegogo.
hmm
I'll pay a 3% stripe fee and that's it. And
exactly.
so, what prompted you to leave? Because
Well,
you're one of the ones who I think did it early.
yeah, I was one of the first ones to leave it. And there's a couple of reasons. How gritty am I allowed to get on your show?
Oh yeah, you can say whatever you want. I mean,
Yeah,
I
but
don't want
yeah,
you to
so
attack a
there's
creator.
a yeah, there's a
You
lot.
know what I mean. You can't
Yeah.
attack a creator on my
Oh, of
show
course
per
not, of
se.
course not. I would
There's just who
never.
you can
Yeah,
attack.
yeah, yeah. I would never do that honestly, because even if I do have um bad blood or I don't talk to creators, I will never put them on blast. You know, the only person who would know that I'm talking about them is them and whoever else they told. But I would never put them on blast. And God, I guess, but I would never put them on blast. I'm not that type of person.
No, 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 no.
But
There's a
yeah, yeah,
few
yeah, yeah.
people
And so
who everybody
yeah,
hates in the industry,
yeah,
and
exactly. And I know I became that because one of the reasons why I left Kickstarter is because I started noticing it became clicky, right? It like you do have comic book fans that are there, right? But then you have comic book fans who are on Indiegogo, So like if you do a Kickstarter, but then you're like, hey, I want to reach out to these other comic book fans because I want to grow my fan base. So I'm gonna do an Indiegogo, then those on Kickstarter demonize you. So that's one of the things that I disliked. And then there's the groups that who will constantly come after you and be like, hey, can you support my book? And it's like, sure, I got a book running. Can you support my book? And then you don't hear anything from them. So it's like
That was called January, man. That was
right,
called January with me. I
yeah.
mean, I'm the first person, and I'll paint a
Mhm.
picture for everybody because I think it's relevant. I ran a Kickstarter for this show in January.
Mhm.
And before that, I interviewed in 8 years about 350 unique individuals.
Mhm.
I shot a message out to about 250 of them. Out of, I think I had 38 backers. And out of the people who were on my show previously, only 29 supported my
Mhm.
project. And I'm saying to myself, wait, like a bunch of you have been on
Yeah.
before, a bunch of you can't be a team player. You're
Mhm.
getting an hour to 2 hour long ad essentially,
Mhm.
and you can't even acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And
And
it changed my position.
right.
And I don't hate people. And look, you know what is word got out, I guess, that people in season 2 used to solicit me for this
Mhm.
show, and now I don't get solicitations, and I just
Yeah.
ask people.
Right. And
And it's very interesting that you bring that up.
yeah, and
Because
ultimately that's what I get at. That's what I'm getting at when I say the clicky part. Because you knew me, like we've talked like since kind of since the beginning, since I've been growing and stuff like that. I think your show was one of the first ones that I was on. So I used to give away all the information that I had for free, just teach everybody and didn't matter who they were. They had a question, sure, come ask me. If I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I don't, I'll research it and I'll tell you. But then I started noticing things started getting weird, like because I would research stuff so much just to make sure I was in the know that I got told, oh, no, you're wrong for that. I'm like, you're wrong for researching? Like, the who, what? So there was that part that I had to deal with. And then after a while, I was like, well, if that's the case, then everybody keeps coming to ask me questions, but I'm wrong for researching this information. I'm going to start charging. And then when I decided to start charging, all of them fell off. And so I was like, oh, okay. So it wasn't that I was wrong. It's just that you were taking my information in the sense that
yeah,
instead of saying
let's
you
talk
learned
about
from me,
that.
you're saying that, oh, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about, rather than saying, yeah, Tier taught me, and I'm not saying I taught everybody everything because a lot of these other individuals did their research themselves and figure stuff out. But there are some individuals who I did teach, and that was, I got their ass to kiss, I guess, and that was how they paid me. So there was that, and then the clicks, and I also started noticing that on Kickstarter, at least in my case. And then I see that also with some other folks' case, but I just don't say anything. It's not my place; it's for them to figure it out. But I started noticing that it started becoming more of creator supporting creator. That's not a bad thing. I think it's dope that creators come out here and support other creators. However, in that same aspect of creator supporting creator, that's what started building the clicks. That's what started creating the hey, support me and I'll support you. And then people will
So
support
let's even dive into that a little bit
you and
because
you do it back and then they'll drop their campaign, you know. But yeah, so it's a lot that took me off, but that was like one of the big things. And I was just like, I'm trying to build a fan base. It's dope if creators support me. Like, I'm not gonna shame you. It's freaking I thank you. I
y-
appreciate it because you're creating your own thing. So if you're supporting another creator, thank you. However, I didn't want 100% of my support to be from creators. And then as soon as creators get mad at you, 100% of your support is gone. So if 100% of my support is actual fans, then I no longer have to worry about that creator support. And that when I realized that, that's when I decided to leave. Because like I said, it just became more creator supporting creator rather than building a fan base. So
so let's even go further into this because we're gonna both get in trouble. But what I
mhm,
started noticing on Kickstarter is I found that there's a lot of takers now. I find that
mhm,
a lot of people, are out for themselves. They
mhm,
pretend that they're not,
mhm,
and that's what I've noticed.
yep,
And I've gotten to the point now. I'm like, and look, January changed me. I got attacked by a few people in the community, and I've just now started realizing that. And look, there are people who comment and are pushing out things for other people,
mhm,
and I'm like, and what's happened to me is that why am I the last one at getting anything out of the deal? And that's
Right.
the thing where, and I'm very honest about this, where you pay your artist, you pay your letter, you pay your inker, you pay your cover artist, you might pay a management team, you might pay
Mhm.
a booker. Look, I know people who have paid a booker to get them on shows, and that booker's not sharing any profit with me, and I'm doing all the work.
Yeah.
And so I'm at the stage where it's like, and then when I bring that up, people are like, why are you charging for your Kickstarter? I'm like, because you have to realize that there's 4
Yeah.
or 5 individuals in the comic community who are charging somebody to get
Mhm.
me on their show, and I'm not getting a piece of the action.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I charge?
Which honestly, that's for them to even say that to you is weird to me because you aren't the first podcaster to do a Kickstarter. I know two. Again, I won't say their name, and I know for one of them because I was kind of in direct support of that. No one asked, "Why are you doing this?" It's like for folks who don't know, because I have a podcast also, but for folks who don't know, podcasts cost money. And depending on your guest, sometimes you have to pay to bring a guest on, depending on your equipment, because equipment breaks. Like I have a broken freaking uh, camera stand back there right now, tripod back there that's broken. Things break. We have to be able to fix that. We also have bills. We also have to bring you on the show. We have to accommodate you if our shows have different types of situations where like, let's say we have something where we send you a goodie bag or a thank you for coming on the show. We got to pay for that stuff. So just like
I mean, I
just
mean,
like our comics cost money to make, being a podcaster costs money too.
I'll break it down very, very simple for me. I
Mhm,
get really good guests and I don't pay. And the
mhm,
reason why it works for me is because I have a 10-year track record.
mhm,
But what people don't understand is that it's my time, it's my energy, it's me taking, not doing what I want to do per se. I
mhm,
prep up and I have bills as far as how to stream this. I have a podcast bill when this is slowly migrating over. There
yeah,
are things that happen. And so, look, I'm not being astronomical
mhm,
expensive, but I'm also to the point where, that's what it is. And look, every once in a while you got to pay, or better yet, somebody asks for a donation. And if
right,
it's reasonable, I mean, if somebody's asking me for $10, and they have a charity, or they're like, hey, can you buy me a coffee? That comes out of my wallet too. And that's what some of the sponsorship money goes to sometimes.
yeah,
But also, I think that people just don't get it. I think it's a big problem right now in the entire industry and also the content I create is evergreen, which
yeah,
means that it is a permanent ad, and over time this stuff converts,
yeah,
and it might only have 4 5 10 views, but guess what, if I brought you 5 backers to your project and that was
mhm,
worth $125 and you gave me $10, that's a good amount of money that's spent versus
yeah,
saying if you spent that same amount of money in a Facebook
yeah.
ad.
Everything for folks who don't know who are in business, everything costs money. Don't believe me, research it yourself. Like I said, I don't give information away for free anymore. Don't believe me, research it yourself. Everything costs money. You know.
But I'm going to call you out on that. I'm going to call you out slightly.
Go
You're
ahead.
not giving anything away for free when you say everything costs money in
Yeah,
business,
yeah, it
because
does.
that's not giving something away for free. It's like
Mhm.
explain to somebody, hey, here's a list of 3 printers, and I
Yeah,
use printer A. That's
yeah.
not giving information. If
Well,
somebody asks you
very
that
true,
question,
very true. Yeah, if someone asks me my print, which I do all the time, like people ask, "Who do you print through?" and I tell them Comics Wellspring. That's who my printer is.
but
Um,
that's not giving
that
information
yeah,
away.
that's not. I'm talking about the nitty gritty stuff, like deeper. Like you ask me who I print with, then sure. You ask me how do I ship stuff? Depends on the question. If you ask me what third party do I use a third party to ship, or do I go straight to the post office, or if you ask me uh how do I ship my products, like that's different.
No. My
But yeah,
point is
yeah,
that if I
mhm,
say to you and somebody
mhm,
says, "Does everything cost money in business?" I'm gonna be like,
yeah,
"Yes."
yeah,
Yeah,
everything
that's
costs
it.
money.
But anyway,
Eh,
continue.
yeah, but that's the thing. Like a lot of people don't. That's the reason why I said that. Like a lot of people don't get that. Like everything that you do is going to cost, and that's for any business: podcasting, comic creation, manga creation. Even if you want to be an actor, there's going to be like people aren't just going to be throwing money at you. There's going to be times where you have to spend money. Even if you're a professional athlete, a lot of these professional athletes, like look at LeBron James, he spends all this money to make sure that he stays in physical shape. What money do you think he's using? Like his freaking piggy bank money from a child? No, he's using the money that they paid him, so that he can get all this stuff done. So everything costs money, no matter what you do. So for it to be free to run, not necessarily, because when you want the bells and whistles, you want the 1080p resolution, you want your podcast to be on every form of distribution for podcasts. You want better mics, you want better lighting, you want better backdrop. All of that costs money. Even if you build it yourself. I know a lot of people, well, you can build your own backdrop. Still, you got to buy a $3 PVC pipe, or you got to buy the whole set so you can make the frame, and then you got to buy the sheets, and then you got to buy the saw to cut it. You get what I'm saying? Everything costs money. So, yeah, everything costs. Everything.
And so my whole thing is that, like, I don't think people understand any of this, and I think this is one of the things that people don't appreciate, and then I think people get pissed off when I ask for money, and I'm like, but what? Why are you upset? Just because somebody else is willing to work for free? And I respond back and I say, look, you know what it is? I'm going to put in a lot of work for your show, And then when I respond back and I say, look, because there was an incident, I said, you have a digital book. If you make your digital book and you commit, and we enter into a year-long contract with real penalties, and I mean real penalties, like 25K penalties, if you violate or I violate, you know what? Then we're going to get somewhere. But until you're willing to do it, and the person's like, oh, I know what you're trying to do, bait me. But I'm not baiting you because you issued the challenge. And so my whole thing is that if you're charging for a digital comic book and you think this is free, I mean, there gets to a point that you have to support what you like. And I think that's the biggest problem. And I think a lot of people in comics don't understand that your Facebook ad, it's great. Paying your cover artist, if you're only printing 200 of them, great, to get your book funded. But guess what? If you do an interview with me, this thing's up on the internet forever.
Yeah.
And so at what point do you understand the difference between having media forever or having a 200 print cover run?
It's the minuscule thinking. That's why if you look at, and to really drive home what you said, if you look at a lot of people will look at actors now and be like, oh, well, how is that actor still making money? Royalties. Is because their stuff is constantly getting played because media is around forever, so they're making money based off of royalties. So in that vein, yes, like if you're all of a sudden things are dying down and then you get a couple of sales for one of your books, you can be like, oh, where did they come from? Probably they listen to the podcast and then they're like, hey, let me go check out this book. I know it's happened to me, even on my own podcast, it's happened.
I'm going to throw something out to everybody. So Joe Rogan, and I know it's a dirty word, but everybody's got to hear me out on this one. Joe Rogan does 11 to 13 million plays per episode across various platforms. Now, what you have to understand is that he has almost 1,600 plus episodes. So episode 300 has done a lot of plays, and then episode 700 has done a lot of plays. And guess what? That stuff is constantly getting played.
Yes.
And so if you had a book and you were talking about it, and I guarantee you a bunch of people in those 1,600 plus episodes 5 years later are still making and getting generated press from it. And that's the thing is that, and it's also the idea that I'm not saying I'm Joe Rogan because I'm nowhere near that level. And I can't even pretend, but it's the idea that what happens fast forward 10 years with this, and it's slowly growing, and all of a sudden, every episode of mine does 400 plays. Right. And then it does 500 plays, and you were on episode 150. And that's the whole problem that I think people don't understand is that you're buying media cheap.
Yeah.
Because there's going to get to a point where you can't buy that same media because it's going to be way too expensive for you.
I think
that's the whole problem.
Yeah, I think too there's always that ideal of instant gratification, right? A lot of people want things now, or a lot of people feel like, oh, well, I did the show, you should have, 10,000 views already. And it's like, that's ultimately not how things work. Like, even if you look at some of these gamers, like famous gamers on YouTube, I'll say Dashie, for instance, go back and look at Dashie, I would say 4 or 5 years ago. He wasn't getting the type of views that he's getting now. No way. He wasn't getting the type of views that he's getting now, but him doing an inconsistency and then people finding out, the views started growing. A lot of people, I call it a Netflix syndrome. They want everything right now. right now. And you see it like even in the creative aspect, with the way some people create their books, they drop their load in every issue. Eventually, as a person who's been writing, quite literally writing, has published works other than the comics that I have now, and has been taught how to write, you know, by novel writers and stuff like that. Eventually, you're gonna burn out doing that. Like, get back to storytelling. Because if you ever notice, and like I was just watching a movie from the '90s the other night, and it watched so much different than the movies nowadays. Like it was a story, told you beginning, middle, and smooth story. Slow burn to some, yes, but it was a smooth story. Whereas nowadays, movies start off, something big has have to happen within the first 5 minutes, or everybody instantly turns their mind off. Um, and so, yeah, like I said, there's a lot of the instant gratification, I think, for a lot of people. So they'll look at it and be like, oh, well, you don't have that many viewers. So I don't want to be on your show. Or, you don't have that many viewers. So why should you ask for money? And it's like, it's growing. Eventually it's going to be there. Like I didn't start off with the fan base that yeah.
I'll give the reason why I'll ask
Mhm.
for money and why people should pay me.
Yeah.
It's very, very simple.
Mhm.
It's one word: access.
Yeah, exactly.
Legitly, if you don't know who I know, that's the
Mhm.
problem.
Exactly.
And I can introduce people to other people, and people say, dude, how do you get all these voice actors on? How do you get certain people who are pretty high up in comics on?
Mhm.
And again, you know what it is? Once you come on my show, little trade secrets, everybody talks before and after.
Mhm.
And believe me, I've gotten people work. I've gotten people, connected with each other. There's a podcast out there that I introduced two people together, and now they're running a show together
See?
talking about zombies.
That's
That
great.
wouldn't have not happened without my introduction.
Yeah.
And I didn't. They both paid separately to be on my show, and they wanted to pay again. I said, I got you for the next round. Don't worry about it because you supported the show. But the idea is that they are now running a show that's benefiting both of their books.
Right.
But again, access. And
Yeah.
so all of a sudden you might pay, but then you're getting access. And then all of a sudden you need a cover artist, and boom, I happen to know that person.
Yeah.
I am having a very interesting guest tomorrow on. And if you need an introduction, congratulations,
Yeah.
and that's how things work. And that's a problem. And I think that's what people don't understand is that sometimes you're not buying per se the views, you're buying access to somebody.
Yeah. It's like it's connections. Everybody needs connections. That's why the country clubs cost so much. Because of who's in there. It's not because it's the building, it's because of who is in there and the person you might end up rubbing elbows with. Um but like I said, everything costs money, and like I was getting at, like as far as like the build of whether it's your comics or whether it's your podcast or whatever, even in acting, like everybody doesn't start off Hollywood star. A lot of these people were in B movies, some of them were in porn, like so many different things, and then they became a Hollywood star. Like for me, like when I started off on my comics, Chimera Kingdom wasn't even a thought in my head. Like I didn't see that coming, but now all of a sudden I do have this fan base that is called the Chimera Kingdom, and it's massive. I mean, states globally. That's the reason why. Another reason why I pulled out a Kickstarter, because I was like, I have the fan base now. Like I don't say much, but it's like I have the fan base now. And things build, and if you build fast, that's great. Like if your stuff built like that, that's great. But it's not like that for everyone, and I think that's another thing too that people miss. Like they'll look at some people like, oh wow, but they became a millionaire overnight. But that's not everyone's journey. Some people's journey, they're gonna sleep in their car for, a year or two, and then they're gonna become a millionaire. Or they're gonna have $5 to their name. That's all they got in their pocket. And then they're gonna become, the greatest and most highest paid action star in Hollywood. Everybody has their own
It's
story.
it's also just even adding to that. It's also the idea
Mhm.
that sometimes it does take a while. I mean, Joe
Yeah.
Rogan in the last 3 to 4 years has become a massive star.
Mhm.
Prior to that, it took a long time. It took about 800 episodes of his show
Mhm.
for him to even get attention and
Yeah.
for people to start paying attention to him. It took Howard Stern a while.
Yeah.
The reason why Howard Stern became big is those lawsuits and then moving to XM.
Very true.
And so all of a
Yeah, right.
sudden, and I'll throw out two other things just to
Mhm.
be politically fair. the Young Turks and the Daily Wire. It took them a long time. And, both those organizations, no matter which way you lean, you have to respect both those organizations on a media level and the way they built out.
Exactly.
Because what those two organizations have done is it took a long time. I don't know if people know, the Daily Wire is about 8 years old. The Young Turks started, I think, in like 2001.
Yeah,
So
they've been that's wrong, because I remember watching them like sometimes like when I remember watching them in the military. So they've been
back
around
like
2001 is when they started.
in the shitty garage
Yeah,
era of the Young Turks.
yeah.
I don't think people understand that they had a shitty like garage setup. It was, I think, Chink, Ben Malkovich, I think JR was there, and then I forget the woman who was there. Anna wasn't there.
Yeah, she
And
wasn't
I
there.
think people forget that it was a small, like 5-person operation.
Yep. Everything starts small and then it grows. If you start big, not being philosophical when I say this, but if you start off massive, the only thing left after that is death. So enjoy the process. Grow.
Yeah, no,
enjoy the
I
process.
agree. But
So
enough about the fact that we just completely just pretty much ruined and gave a truth, I guess, serum pill to everybody.
Yeah.
And welcome to reality. It is
Exactly.
And I'm just going to say this: I think that people need to hear these conversations, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
think people need to, in the creative realm, understand that this is a business, and you need to think business oriented, and you also need to call out. And I think people need to be more honest. And I get why people don't want to do it, because they're scared. Because right now they have something that's working, they're getting a little bit of something, but there's a lot of questions I have for a lot of people.
And it's like they don't want to ruffle feathers. But that's the thing too with business too. And I hope folks know this. I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence, but you will always ruffle feathers. You're not going to make everyone 100% happy. And that was something that I had to come to terms with myself, because I wanted folks to be happy. That's the reason why I was, teaching folks how to do things for free, and, giving writing tips and all this stuff. And then I started realizing that, like, when I didn't do anything wrong, but instead just gave my knowledge like I'm doing now, and people would get mad at me over that. That's when I realized, is like, no matter what you do, like, these are the same people that will ask me questions, but then get pissed off at me when I tell them the hardcore truth. I was like, so no matter what you do, there's going to be people that are unhappy. And then that's when I really started shifting, because I was like, the folks that like you are going to like you. The folks that don't, there's really nothing you can do about it.
I agree. I also the advice I give is that, look, there's also a time and place. So for instance, there are people that there's no good reason for me to start a war with them right now.
Yeah.
And there's no good reason for me to interact with them. And so I also say to people, look, you don't have to fight every battle.
Exactly.
You really don't. And you could pick and choose which battles are the most important to fight, which ones aren't. And look, when people tell me I'm wrong about something, I've had very significant gains in the stock market when people told me I was crazy.
Yeah.
And we're talking like 700% rate of return. Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. You're 100% right. I'll just do my thing. And then what is people are like, and I'm like, but I don't even brag. I'm just like, I think you're wrong. You think I'm wrong. But at the end of the day, when I'm driving a Lambo and I'm buying your Lambo, it'll be a very interesting day.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's why, like, sometimes you could just walk away. Like, I walked away from a lot of things, like, instead of pushing the issue or asking the question or saying why or get into the argument. I'm just like, okay, and go about my business. Because, like I said, someone already has their mind made up. You can probably try to change their mind, but that whole changing of the mind thing only works, and from what I've noticed in my 39 years of living, it only really works with individuals who actually care about you. You might be able to change that. You may be able to change their mind depending on what you did to them. But someone who already doesn't give a crap about you, like, don't even fight that battle. Just like, okay. And that's what I had to realize. Like, first I would get angry and want to, like, no, maybe you should listen. I'm just trying to help. And then after a while I was just like, okay. And just leave it at that.
I was in a very friendly debate with somebody privately talking about graded books. I said, hey, that's your opinion. That's fine. And I'm not going to convince you. And it was a friendly conversation. He has a different opinion than I do, and so I said, what, I'm not going to pick the fight. And because it was a friendly conversation, it wasn't like he's like, I don't get it, and I think you're wrong. And I'm like, I'm not going to pick the fight, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it also wasn't the hill to die on. And it was also a friendly conversation. But if I'm in a serious debate, I mean, I agree. You have to be able to change somebody's mind. But enough of ruining our careers here. And for brutal honesty, I mean, I would ask you about Eric July, but I don't think that's a good topic to dive into.
I've already talked about Eric on my podcast. If I'm being honest, and this is probably gonna get me put even more of a hole, but I don't like. Okay, I think what he's doing is great, and I think a lot of people are mad because he stepped away from Kickstarter.
So let me throw my opinion to you. This is what I think. I think he's run a great Kickstarter, and I think he's done Kickstarter's not the word, crowdfunder. I think great crowdfunding. I don't think he did anything new. I don't think he did anything insightful. This has been done before, but he broke and figured out a way how to raise a boatload of money. Now, is his book good or bad? We have no idea.
No idea.
Because and that's all right. Where you can say somebody did a great job raising money. Right?
Exactly. And that's what I say with it. Like when I saw what he did, I was like, holy crap, And I think a lot of people only expected to see numbers like that with Kickstarter, but it's like I think a lot of people forget too, like we were just talking earlier, the slow build, the building. Like this dude is part of a band, he has his YouTube channel, he's been building a fan base. So when all those years of building that fan base, and now he's like, I'm making a comic, all of those fans just straight to it,
It's that, and it's also the idea though that I think people also are going and combining the two things, and they're conflating that if you raise $4 million, your book's got to be $4 million worth X. Where it could be a shitty book.
Yeah,
it could be a great book. There could be great questions. It could be an average book. And so I think people lump 14 different things because they associate money with good.
Yeah, and that's the other weird part too when it comes to folks is like I've seen movies make $1 billion and they weren't that good. Like they really were not that good. It's really the fan base, and I think a lot of people got to start understanding that too. Like you were just saying, like money doesn't mean it's good. Like I've seen some Kickstarters where I've even backed them, and I've read the book and I was like, oh wow. And before I used to look at it and be like, how in the world? And then I had to think about it myself. I was like, okay, this person has a fan base. This person has already done like 10 Kickstarters. So of course they're going to make this type of money when they get this book, when they come out with another book, because they already have that fan base. And the thing is too, for folks to think about, even if you get 100,000 backers, right? I can guarantee you 50,000 are probably not going to like what you like. And that's just basically going off of the 50-50 rule. 50,000 are not going to like what you did. Will they support the next one? Possibly. But
so
50,000 may not like what you did.
What I think is going to happen to Eric July is the following. But first and foremost, this is what happens. He raises the money. He's going to be delayed by a year. No question.
Oh, no, the book's already done. Like, he already has the books in his factory.
Well, maybe.
That's the thing too, because like he was saying that because I watched because like I've watched his videos before this, and so like when this happened, I was like, and I saw people saying Kickstarter. I was like, yeah, that wasn't on Kickstarter. It was on his website. So I watched one of his videos, and pretty much what he did was a pre-order, which we all know Kickstarter is supposed to work like a pre-order, right? Which it does. It's just some people, because of circumstance or what have you, they may get pushed along where it's later than what they thought it would be. That happened to me with Yama Stigmata. So it happens, right? But like what he did, I guess he already had bought the books and then just said, if you want them, come buy them. So people just started buying them, and he set up from what I'm understanding in this video, he set up a schedule. So he's like, okay, y'all bought them. These group of books are going to go out at the end of August. These group of books are going to go out at the beginning of September, and doing it like that because he didn't know how many people would be backing. And I think the last video I saw is like 100,000 people that pre-ordered. And I'm just like, holy crap,
This is what I think is going to happen with him. I think that he's going to get his books out. I think it's going to be a 6-month process of him getting his books out. I think that's relatively safe. It might be 8 months. But that's neither here nor there. That's not the big issue. The issue becomes is that are people going to feel like I backed a $35 book and did I get a $35 position? Because now the issue is that it was fear of missing out, or did I make a stupid purchase?
Right.
And I don't know the answer to that question. I'm neither here nor there. I think what is going to happen is I think it's going to be an average book. That's my feel on it. That's my feel on everything else that has come out celebrity oriented. It is very rare that a celebrity oriented book is just better than average.
Yeah.
I mean, the Keanu Reeves book, the Wesley Snipes book, there's been a few others. Those are really just average books. It's sort of like a pig in lipstick, and they're not bad. I think they're worth what you pay. I don't think that you're getting value beyond, if it's a $50 book, you're getting a $50 book.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that you're getting a good page count for $35, but I think it's going to be an average position, but it can also be a disaster because let's say that 70% says, man, this was not what I thought it was. There was fear of missing out, and man, this was okay. It wasn't even average. And that's where I think this is going to get really tricky. But again, maybe I'm wrong. And, but my take is that.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. At least I'm going off my personal, the way that I do books personally. Like there's indie comic books that I have where I was like, okay, I got to get every issue. Miskatonic High is one of them. Delta Dogs is another. The stuff at Ovation Comics, Catalyst Comics. Those are books that I'm like, okay, I got to make sure I have them. But there's some books like I give them the 1-2. Issue 1, issue 2. Let's see if you're going somewhere. I read issue 1, I read issue 2, and I'm just like, okay, you didn't go anywhere. I don't see story progressing. I just see a sitcom, like the way the sitcoms were before, things like the Arrowverse start off. We had the baddie of the week and then the overarching arc, where they were just like every episode was something different. And it's like some folks try to do the interconnected thing where they interconnect the stories, which was one of the things I kind of wanted to help with. But like I said, people tend to try to burn, they try to unload their entire wad on issue 1. One of the reasons why, which is something that I was told, because I think it was after I wrote Cypher Team issue 1 and got it published, and everybody was like, this is kind of a slow burn. Like, you want to put everything in issue 1. And I'm like, okay, but why? Because like if I put everything in there, what am I going to put in issue 2? And it's not selling myself short as a creator. Like I know I can blow my wad in issue 1 and then come back and do it in issue 2. However, it creates burnout after a while. That's
interesting.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question on that, and then we'll get into Cypher Team. Because this is really interesting because I backed and I gave it the 1-2 rule and I couldn't do issue 3. And I think what happened is that this person got either a publishing deal or the publisher said, hey, we're interested in your book. Are you going to do 6 issues? And issues 1 and 2, at the end of issue 2, we started getting into the meat of the story, but I already put $40 in. And I was like, man, you should have just started in which that you should have blown your wad on issues 1 through 4. And we didn't need the her being a bitch. I didn't need 64 pages of the main character being a bitch. I got it. I got it in like the first 3 panels. Okay. And that was my problem.
And I get that.
Because he had appeals.
And I get that too, because that's the opposite end of the spectrum, I think. I'm a type of person, I'm a type of creature, I believe in balance. And for me, when I see stuff like that, where it's just a slow burn to be a slow burn because you think that's what storytelling is, I think that's not good because you lose the reader. It
had nothing to do with storytelling, in my opinion.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's worse.
What it had to do with he had a 6-issue deal where a publisher wanted 6 issues because they wanted to have 6 months of a story. And that's what I think the problem was.
So he tried to stretch it out.
Yeah, that was the problem. And so now you have an issue where you didn't get to the meat of it, where you would have been better off instead of doing 32 pages, doing 24 pages and spreading that over 6 issues instead of giving me 64 pages of her being a bitch. I didn't need to know the main character is a bitch.
Yeah, is that, no, yeah, I get that, and that to me, that's more along the lines of, and I'm just gonna be brutally honest, an individual who doesn't know their story. I know it's not like you were saying, it's not really storytelling, but if you're doing that and your issue one and issue two are so snail paced, you're probably writing that saying, "Oh my god, what am I going to do? How am I going to take this? What direction am I going to go?" Even if you got a publisher, um, that's the reason why one of the things I used to tell folks is like, "Hey, instead of keeping it here, like if you know you're going to do an arc, write a synopsis out. Write the synopsis for issue one, issue two, issue three, issue four, issue five, issue six, issue seven, however many issues the arc is. Write a synopsis, not for the entire arc, but for every issue, so you can make sure you hit every point. You can make sure you have your action. You can make sure you have your drama. You can make sure you have your talking points, and you can divvy that out amongst every issue. That's what I do, and
Because the reason why I bring this up is that I
Mhm.
think it's a real problem now that people are getting signed to Scout or Second
Yeah.
Sight Publishing or Source Point
Mhm.
or Behemoth or what they've become. And there's going to be more indie ones that pop up, and I
Mhm.
think that's becoming a real problem when somebody. And I don't know how you're going to deal with that problem per se, and then you don't have to answer at all
I'm
for
not.
this.
I'm not signing to anyone. That's another reason why people didn't
No,
like
no,
me.
no, no. I mean,
Oh,
when somebody wants
Oh,
to
as far as
sign
like mine. Oh, that's why I got Sovereign One.
no, 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 no. But the
Oh,
idea is that what happens is that
mhm,
when a publisher or an indie publisher says, "Look, we really like your thing. We want 6 issues because we want 6 months to sell into Diamond,
mhm,
or into another thing," and that creates a whole bigger problem because they're like, "Look, we know that we could sell the graphic novel, but
right,
also we have deals with board games and video games and Hollywood,
right.
and they need a bigger piece of the apple." And that creates a whole bigger problem. I think that
Oh
is
yeah,
actually detrimental because
yeah,
sometimes a story is only 3 issues.
yeah, very true.
And, if you stretch it out to 6, you get the problem where I dropped off after issue 2
Yeah,
because I couldn't take it anymore because you didn't give me enough as a creator, especially at $20 a pop. And
mhm.
this person's a friend. And I'm like, how do I tell my friend, dude, the first issue was way too slow. At the end of issue 2, we were finally getting somewhere.
Tell
But
them.
like,
To be honest, just tell them. That's what I do with my friends. Like a lot of some of the three of the writers that I brought on are actual friends of mine. And I am the editor in chief, and they understand. They understand. Hey, we're part of Sovereign Comics. One is writing a story of this, and well, he has a story that's going to be a Sovereign Orange, and then another one is Sovereign Black. One of the other one's writing a story in Sovereign One, and the other one's writing a story in Sovereign Orange. I'm the editor in chief. I control all of those until it gets big enough to where I can hire more editor in chiefs for each part. But I straight up told him, okay, if I'm reading this, I'm coming to you as the editor. Yeah, we're friends, but understand right now, this is the editor. This little lion that you look at, that's my baby. So I want to make sure that everything is good and that your story is freaking amazing. Because I look at their stories just like it's mine.
yeah,
So
but
just
there's a
yeah,
way how
just
to.
tell them. Yeah, but you can say it nicely too. Like what I do is like I red mark it, and then I'm like, okay, I love what you were doing with this.
However, you thought about doing it this way, or maybe you can do it this way, or maybe you can speed it up here, and
It really does depend on how you do come at people. Now, if you came at your friend, you're like, dude, this it was garbage. Depending on your friends, like I did have friends like that where I can be like, yo, that was stupid what you did, and we'll be fine.
um, some friends you can't do that too. But if this is one of those friends where you can be like, yo, that was garbage, and then y'all can go and have a beer afterwards, then be like, yo,
This is where you messed up at. I'm gonna tell you the truth. This is where you messed up at. You need to fix this in future stories.
But yeah, it does. It depends on the person.
Yeah,
um,
because I don't want to be a dick. That's the
yeah.
problem. Is that and look, what is it's already published,
Mhm.
and I'm just saying to myself, like, is it really worth me throwing a hand grenade into somebody's day?
Yeah.
Like, that's the other thing
Yeah,
too.
I
Is
feel I
that
feel that. It's like I don't want to ruin your happy moment.
Because that's the other thing too. Like when you typically tell folks stuff, instead of folks hearing it, they're like, "Oh, are you hating? Are you jealous?"
Which that's happened to me before too. Somebody I knew got a movie option for their comic, and I told them, I was like, "Hey, before you sign off on anything, you might want to start creating more content because this is some of the things you may run into going into Hollywood." And you might run into them saying, "Hey, you're in a contractual obligation that we are the distributor and the producers of your comic book movie as it's being turned into a movie. You will not write the script. You will not have creative rights. Also, you need to stop writing comic books, which a lot of people don't know that that's an option. Like that's quite literally an option. They look at the dude who created Walking Dead. They're like, well, he kept getting to write comic books. Yeah, but he had content. He had a fan base. So when AMC approached him and said, hey, we want to turn this into a TV show, they were like, you stay on it. You still get creative rights, because they knew that if they corrupted it, fans would be mad. Right. And that's where a lot of people miss. They're like, they get that one book and then they meet somebody who just came out of film school and they're like, oh, we can option this for a movie. Now you're lost in the sauce. They can do whatever they want to it, because one, you don't have a fan base. Two, you don't have enough books. And now you're at their disposal.
Oh man, you're just giving me questions, because now I have to follow up with this, because one of the debates that I had, and somebody said something to me. He said, Andrew, that's because you don't have a comic book. But me and a few other people at one point were speaking about this, and Royal House. I was speaking with Royal House about this, and it's Roderick Curtis. I was speaking with, and we're talking about the idea of when do you sell an IP?
Yeah,
because this is a really good question. Where if I create something and I know it's worth good money, and somebody's offering me like $300,000 for it, and I'm only on issue 4, and somebody says, look, I want to buy the comic book, I want to buy the rights to it, I want to buy everything. They're going to offer me $300,000 to $400,000. And I like the idea, but at the same time, there gets to a point where you're like, well, this money could really go into my business. This could be a really good exit. And that's the thing when we talk about options of movie rights and things of that nature. And it's also the idea. So I'm very curious how you feel about that too, because that's a complicated issue, isn't it?
Yeah. So my thing is, like I've said before about Sovereign Comics, I will never sell. Like I have some big plans coming as far as things. I don't want to say, I don't know who watches your show. It might be some of the folks who don't like me anymore, but I have some big plans coming. But this is what I say. These are the questions that you have to ask yourself whenever you run into something like that. Are you finished with the story? Meaning, if someone takes over it, you no longer care what they do to your characters. Is this your baby? Meaning, when you wake up in the morning, the first thought that comes on your mind is, oh, I got to write something. Oh, I got to create something. Also, this is the biggest question that you should ask yourself. If they are willing to pay me anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 for this product, how much is it really worth? Because this is what you have to understand about business, right? A business, when they approach you and they sell it to you, this is for startups also, they will always lowball. Why do they lowball? Because they need to make sure that they can make money off the product. So they look at their own bank account, they look at their own assets, they look at their own petty money and all this other stuff that they have, and they say, okay, we can offer them $300,000 for that. We'll make that $300,000 back in a couple of months, but let's plan for the future. How much do we want to make in the next year? Oh, we want to take that $300,000 product and turn it into a $5 million product in the next 3 years, or $10 million product in the next 10 years. Another person to look at is the owner of Victoria's Secret and what they did. Victoria's Secret is $1 billion company right now, and he sold it for $1 million. So those are the questions that I say that you should look at. Do you love what you do? Is your story finished? Is this your baby that you cannot part with? And if they're willing to pay you $300,000, how much can you make from it yourself?
Well, also, I'm going to throw some
or working with them, because you could probably get them to go higher too. So
that too, and also I also throw in the idea of saying, look, because in the comic book world, what I always say is that sometimes something is worth money. So I use this in liquidation, and this is nothing. I'm not giving anything away for free. Where your dad or your mom was a big comic collector, and you know that they got 50 round worth of comics. You know nothing about comics. Comics don't interest you. They pass away, but they're worth money, and so your objective is to get 60 to 70 cents on the dollar versus 30 cents on the dollar. So you understand that if you walk away with $30,000, that it's a good deal for you.
Yeah.
And so with what I always, and what we're speaking about, is that it depends on your circumstance. So if you know that you're 80 years old, that your kids are not going to be able to handle this, they don't want to take over your business, but you could get $3 million and then gift it to your 2 kids and give them $1.5 million as a gift, And you put parameters on that and all that stuff. But that's the other thing too, is that situations matter.
Yeah.
So if you're in a circumstance and somebody's offering you $1 million for something, and you know that you're sick of comics or it's time to move on to something else, but it's a lot of money that's gonna basically allow you to be financially free, that also changes things too. Where now you're getting a boatload of money in, and there you go.
Yeah,
And
that's what I said. Like if you ask yourself, is this my baby? You know, is my story finished? And honestly, are you tired? Like, because some people are, and I get that. Like some people get to that point where they've done, you know, maybe 3 issues, maybe 6, maybe 12, maybe 24, you know, and they're like, hey, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm burnt out. I want to relax. And then someone comes to them and is like, hey, I'll give you, you know, $500,000 for that.
If you're already done,
then yeah, sell it.
like just sell it. Let someone else.
That's why I say, is your story finished, and are you willing to let? Is your story finished? Is it your baby, and are you willing to let someone else take control? Because
that part of willing to let someone else take control
typically comes from you being tired. Like for me, like with my main titles, I'm not to that point where I'm like, yeah, here you write Cypher Team Alpha. Like I'm not to that point yet because I'm not tired. But who knows? Maybe somewhere down the line I might get tired, you know. And
but you could also get to the point of saying, look, I don't want to write it anymore, but I just want to hire a writer. And you could give equity sharing of a book to somebody. There's a million ways where, for instance, like if you got tired of writing Cypher Team, you could say, look, I'm willing to pay you a page count, or I'm willing to give you a royalty on everything that you write. So you could set something up and say, look, I'm going to still oversee it, but I got 15 things, or you're going to at some point have grandkids, hopefully. I think I could say it because you're a father.
Not yet.
So
not
yet.
Not yet. Please God, not yet. I got a kindergarten and a 7th grader. They better wait.
You get where I'm going.
I get where you're going though.
You're in like in 20 years, you're like, you know what? I want to take 2 years and I want to spend time with my grandkids. So you might hire a writer for a little bit, just so you could take like an 18-month sabbatical.
Exactly. Yeah. Like there is a point that I do have planned at the end of the road, not at the end of the road, but at the end of this story. That's the reason why I also said, ask yourself, is your story finished? Because there's an interconnected universe, so there's an overarching story, and there is an end to the story where the comic book universe is gonna evolve again, but it's gonna evolve in a way that is gonna be unrecognizable in a sense. And once we hit that point and it's time for that next step in evolution, that's probably where I plan to back out and say, okay, I'm only gonna work on these 2 books. These are the only 2 books that I'm gonna write, and then I'm gonna hire writers and stuff like that, or the writers that I already have in camp, and be like, okay, I'm tagging you for this. I'm tagging you for this, you know, and then like.
So basically, you're going to pull Triple H is what you're going to do.
Yeah, pretty much.
so I'm not going to press you too hard on that, but I do want to talk about Cypher Team, because Cypher Team is what's going on. I don't think we spoke about Cypher Team all that much in the last like 4 interviews.
Yeah, we really haven't.
And I know we spoke about Stars. I know we spoke about, you know, the Tuskegee Airmen. I can't say that name.
Yeah. Hey, I almost with the Tuskegee Airmen. We talked about that.
I'm going to fail at saying it, and I don't want to embarrass myself any more than I need to.
No worries.
and then the Expo one we spoke about as well. But what is the basic premise of those who don't know anything about Cypher Team and what's going on with it and all that fun stuff?
So with Cypher Team, one of the things that I really have to make the first point and explain it to folks is they have superpowers, but they're not a superhero team. What I mean by that is they are not the Avengers. They are not Justice League. Mainly Justice League. Justice League kind of frowns upon killing the bad guy. That's the reason why Diana got in all that trouble when she snapped old dude's neck. I think the Avengers have killed before, but they're a special forces operation unit. They are special forces. They are military trained in some way or fashion. So they will kill the bad guy. There's like pages, if you look through the books, where you will see like heads on the ground with nobody attached to it. Like you will see Kunoichi stabbing her kunai through someone's chest. Like when she did her drop at the end of issue 1 and did, you know, Dragon's Breeze, people died in that. You know, so it's like They kill. So when you just because they have powers, don't automatically think, "Oh my gosh, they're superheroes." No, they will kill because they are a military group and they're special forces. So if the orders are do what you got to do or kill the target or bring the target, that's what they go based off of. So their orders for this one was get in, stop everything by any means necessary, and prepare for the Angels of Anarchy who show up in issue 2 because they knew that would be a bigger threat, which they were, because when they came on scene, they just started killed. It was worse.
So let's talk about this because clearly there is a division where there's regular humans and then there's these people who have these powers.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
we dive into the age-old debate, which is called Civil War, essentially, where do you register powers or do you not register powers? And I think it's called the Zenith or Zenith. I want to say.
Yep, Zenith. You had it right.
And so now it's National Registration Day.
Yep.
They know something's going to happen. They don't know exactly what's going to happen. They know there's going to be a threat. And then this team is reactivated after an incident 10 years ago, which we learn about in issue 3, 4, and wherever else you're going with this. So I'm not going to focus too much on that. But what is this like? Because obviously they have to deal with a minor threat. And then the real threat is, the Angels of Anarchy, which really is brewed out of a 10-year feud.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they are.
It's all about the girl, right? It's all about the girl, right?
Yeah.
It's all about the girl, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like you're gonna find out that one of the feuds is kind of like a unsaid love triangle in a sense, but then another one is more familial, like their family, and one feels backstab. But you'll learn. Say again. Huh?
They shouldn't have killed his dog.
Yeah, they shouldn't have killed his dog. But yeah, so you'll learn about that in issue 3, where it's going to be a 2-parter, which I'm in the process of writing this script now. Yeah, you're going to learn more about what the tension that you feel in issue 1 and issue 2. So to answer your question, you're asking pretty much how they deal with that. So there is the Zenith Annual Registration Summit. That's where they go to Zenith Annual Power Registration Summit. So they go to these Zenith sites, which there's one in every major city, in every state in the United States, and every major city across, overseas and everything like that. So these Zenith will go. If they've just gotten their powers or if they developed a new power or something like that, they'll go and register them so that it's in the database. In a sense, it's to have, and I think a lot of people don't get this too, but to have freedom, there has to be some type of surveillance, So in a sense, it is surveying them, keeping an eye on them for multiple reasons. One, because people do in this universe steal and kidnapped and sex traffic and just traffic Zenith children and Zenith teenagers and Zenith adults. So it happens. So they know if a certain power comes up, then they already have this registered on what this person can do. They know who it is and they know how to deal with them. So you have that.
You're dealing with government compliance is really the word, where it's the idea that there's freedom, but there also has to be some element of control. And, it's called living. I mean, it's America. I don't know if you're still here. I don't know.
Oh, there I am. I'm back.
That was what I was saying is that it's basically like America, where you surrender certain rights, but you also have a variety of other rights. And I think it's, that concept isn't new, but I get where we're going with it. But continue.
Yeah, it's not a new concept. It's just I think a lot of people don't fully understand how it works, because they're like, "Oh, you're taking my freedoms." Like, well, not really. Like, it has to be some type of balance. I mean, some things yes, some things no. But
so like you have that going on, right? So that's just how the world works. So the reason why the world is working like that now, because there's an event that happened 10 years prior that you're going to learn about in issue 3.
So they got to a point because the first Zenith kind of presented themselves back in the 1800s, and that's when they first popped off. So like in my universe, slavery was ended early because the individual who
I should
Powers
not be
to-
laughing.
Yeah,
at
but it's
that. I
like,
should
yeah,
not be
it
laughing at
ended
that.
it ended hella
Kind
early
of funny the
because
way you said it.
yeah, because it ended hella early. They was because it ended before it ended in our history books. So like because the first Zenith to pop up was actually a slave, so it was like forced forced ending. So that was it.
We
So-
can make this. We can make this. It was
Yeah.
highly encouraged to do the right
yeah,
thing.
it was like, hey, let us go, or I'm burning everything to the ground. So it's like
It was highly encouraged. You
yeah,
know,
highly encouraged to stop. And
we
another
have
thing,
to soften it a little bit.
yeah, and then there's like another thing too in like the universe, because of course because of that, of course there was still racism and stuff, and not only that, but now racism towards people with power. So you still had
it's almost instead of this double divide, or rather, actually more in America, we got
political divide, religious divide, race divide. So not only that, now you have a power divide. So pretty much as time goes on, this event that happened 10 years prior changed a lot of heads, changed a lot of ideas, because at one point it was like regular people and people with powers that actually started getting along, because they started seeing, oh, well, you're regular except for your powers. So they started getting along, everything started getting good. But there was this group, and this was them in their infancy, in a sense, called the Protectors of Mankind, which they're the ones that started all of the trouble in issue 1 and issue 2. They after laying waste to every hate group in America, like they literally destroyed every hate group in America, save for theirs. They were like, "Oh, you don't like people because they're different religion and different colors? Well, we're dealing with people who can blow a state up. So your ideas are very minute compared to what's actually coming." So they just lay waste to all of them. So and
So,
then
to even get into that,
Yeah.
because I mean, I'm not saying that they're justified, but
Yeah.
to some degree, it actually does raise a really good question, though,
Mhm.
with this group, because they're like, well, these people, and look, they're not all bad people who have these powers, but it is somewhat of a threat.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fair concern, and that's where the compliance comes in. But
Mhm.
then that has created a very interesting divide
Yeah.
from what I've read of issues 1 and 2, because I think some people get what this group is.
Yeah.
And they're not discriminating based on race or creed. They're saying, look, this person can shoot lasers or basically have all these crazy powers or shoot flames out of their hand.
Exactly.
Maybe we're a little scared because I have a gun, but they could shoot fire out of their hand.
Yeah, they can melt my gun in my hand.
so it's like, so like their fear is a little more valid. Like it's like they are
It's
actually a
justified
threat.
to some
It's like,
degree.
Yeah, it's like they're actually a threat. So but that team, Protected Mankind, started instigating some things. I'm not gonna say what happened, but it gets into a really big problem to where you also see the infancy of the country of Amandla, which is mentioned like when you go to the lighthouse in issue 1, like it's like on the beachhead of Amandla.
And that was an
But-
issue in of itself, and
Yeah.
it was inferred that there was
Mhm.
something that went on in the past.
Yeah, and there's like a big thing that went on. The big
Because
I-
my understanding of that country is that it's a zenith country or zenith country, right?
it's a country that's in its infancy.
Yeah,
I keep jumping up.
you froze for a
Okay.
second. What were you saying?
Yeah, so it's a country that's in its infancy, but yeah, it was created for individuals with powers because of things that kind of started happening. But then they also wanted to have their own rights in a sense, and NATO and America and a lot of they thought it would be a little easier. Just okay, we'll let them stand up their own country. So they did that, and in doing that, of course, they had to do everything that came with that. But it's not just Zenith that live there. There are regular people who don't have powers who live there. They may have gotten jobs
I wonder
there.
what country
Yeah.
in the real world is like that.
Yeah, it's very similar to America and Dubai, if I'm being honest. Like, well, I would say
was
probably
gonna
more
throw-
like
I was
Dubai.
gonna throw Israel into that
Yeah.
mix.
Yeah, Israel too. I would say probably more like like as far as like the beauty of the country is probably like there's a city that you're gonna see as the books go on that everything's automated, like even your car. So once your car hits city limits, it gives you the option to continue driving, but it's going to drive for you, but you can stay on the ground or it would go airborne. So to either take your car airborne or you can stay on the lower levels. And it gives you an option where you just press the button and the car does what, like it's so much stuff that's coming in Sovereign Comics as far as like the world and as everything keeps building.
So to
But
even go further into this book, because obviously that's kind of the background, and then this team is reactivated for military training. And what makes this interesting is obviously they're dealing with the Angels of Anarchy.
Yeah.
And these people know each other, for lack of a better word. They know they're coming. There's issues. It's sort of implied in issues 1 and 2 that they haven't seen each other, these two groups, for a while.
Yeah, it's been
and
a very long time.
And so now there's power growth. They're 10 years into it. I don't know when was the last time they've seen it, but at least it's been a few years, if not 10 years, since something's sort of taken place between these two groups. And it's a very interesting thing. And so what is this like? Because you have a group of people who know each other, who have different ideologies, have different philosophies of power. You don't really know what the Angels of Anarchy stand on per se at the moment, but we do know that they have a different philosophy than Cypher Team Alpha.
Right.
And also, just to add another question into this, it's also these characters also, I don't know what the Anarchies of Angel, if they have kids or anything, but people on Cypher Team are married, they have families, and so it really raises a very interesting position of there's real consequences on how they act.
Exactly. And that's ultimately what it leads to. Because and this is something that I don't know if I said much of other than on my own lives. So you might be the first show that's hearing this. But a lot of the members of Angels of Anarchy, some of them are former heroes. So like a lot of the villains that you're going to start meeting in the Silvers as they come forward are going to be former heroes who have changed their ideology or the way that they think because of the event that happened 10 years prior. A lot of these individuals decided, they were like, why am I going to continue to protect a species or someone who just wants me dead? Why am I going to risk my life to protect them, expend my powers to protect them, when the only thing they want is for me to be dead? And whenever you read issue 3, when it's done, you'll see why they're thinking that way, because of what happened. See, the internet doesn't want me to talk about it, but but yeah, so like
my internet that does this. That's how it usually is.
Yeah, it's the weather though. But yeah, so like a lot of them were heroes. And then they became villains because of the events that happened. And for Angels of Anarchy, the way they look at it is they feel like they are no longer obligated to protect anyone that would put their life or their children's lives or their species lives, which is the Phenosapiens or the Zenith and all, in danger. So they look at humanity now as a cancer that needs to be removed. So that's how they look at normal people, because they feel like it's never going to change. They use, of course, they use history to base, their ideas. They, the Holocaust, slavery, everything, what the Japanese went through.
There's a lot of stuff that's in this. And you could read it on a very, I guess, superficial level. No disrespect on that. You could just say, look, these people clearly don't like these people, and they have different ideology, and they're going to battle it out, and they're going to figure it out one way or the other. Or you could dive further into this. You could dive into how people evolve over time. Also, events play a particular part in all this and all that stuff. And then you could go in like 20 different directions per se.
Yeah, exactly.
you could go down all the levels if you would like,
Exactly.
but that's as far as the reader can choose how they want to read your book.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I do that I really try to put into my stories. I love writing. I love telling stories first and foremost. So a lot of the stuff in my stories, it's there, but it really depends on the reader and how in depth they look at it. Because even in Yamo Stigmata, the second issue, um, people read it and they were just like, "Oh man, that was so horrible." But then people read it, like other people read it, and they're like, "That is very eerily reminiscent of." And they would mention what it was, and I was like, "Yeah, I didn't realize I was writing that until I went back and read the script." So it's like, so it's there, but it's not there as a method of, look at me, look what I'm writing. It's more of me telling these stories of these characters and their lives and things that they've gone through. And in reality, it mirrors a lot of reality. There are good people, there are bad people. I know people don't want to believe that, but that's life, and and it's mirrored in my comics with everything. But yeah, like if you read it superficially and you just go through the dialogue and read it, you're more than welcome to do it that way. And if you're the deep thinker and you're looking for stuff, you're gonna find that too, because there's a rabbit hole that's there and is waiting for you. Like, so so if you start looking deep, trust me, you're gonna go down it.
And then
So
even going further outside of this, I'm not going to go ruin what exactly
mhm,
happens because there's a million things that go down with this. And
mhm,
I mean, I could think of 15 different ways how to just continue this story or even spin off stuff out
mhm,
of Cypher Team
mhm.
because there's going to be consequences.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff. And that kind of leads into Temple High a little bit.
Mhm.
I'm going to drop a little bit of a spoiler, but it's not a major one.
Go ahead.
Damien is one of these people's kids.
Yes. Yes.
And in particular, I think it's Pride Blade's kid and it's Singleton, I believe.
Yeah, the
Um,
Singletons. Yep. So Fireblade, that's his dad, and Alchemy is his mother. Um,
yes.
they are known as the Jinn Hunters, so they actually get their abilities from Jinn. Um, the mother, Alchemy, she comes from a long line of Jinn Hunters. So Fireblade married into the family, and since he was marrying her, her father's like, "Well, you got to go on your trip, your journey to capture your Jinn, so that you can protect you can help in protecting the family." So he ends up capturing Ifrita, which is like the queen of fire Jinn. I think she gave herself to him because she is it's a funny back and forth because like because these Jinn can reveal themselves, except for Damien's. Like Sparky doesn't do that, and there's a reason for it, and that comes later in the story. But Ifrita loves to reveal herself whenever Alchemy's around because she openly flirts with Fireblade. So there's this idea that she gave herself to him on purpose. Because she like openly flirts with him and stuff. So there's like this, like, so when you see her, like, as the stories go on and stuff, you'll be like, oh, that's what he was talking about. But so Damien's their kid, and he's like the main focus of Temple High. And the reason for that is because like I've explained, some folks are reading, they're like, oh, so it's like My Hero Academia. And I'm like, no. I'm like, the only thing they have similar is just like with X-Men, you have superpower kids who are going to a school that allows them to be who they are. Like that's really the only similarity. Um, other than that, a lot of these kids that you're seeing, a lot of these kids that you're falling in love with, some aren't going to be alive that long. Some are going to become villains. Some are going to become the new Cypher Team Alpha. Some are going to have other Cypher teams. So it's like,
Let's even
it's,
talk about this a little bit
yeah. So
because
mhm,
one of the things is that, and I mentioned this before, I view
mhm.
your book as Sky High, the movie. That's an old movie.
Yeah,
But,
it is. It was a good movie. I liked it.
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I think was Kurt Russell. No, no, not. I think Kurt Russell was in that,
Yeah, it
right?
was Kurt
Or
Russell. Yeah,
maybe
he
he
was the
wasn't.
dad.
I
It
don't know.
was Kurt Russell.
But what?
Yeah, that was Kurt Russell because he was the dad, the superhero. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
Kurt
yeah,
Russell.
yeah. I thought it was the best scene in that is that um I'm gonna have to take away your Xbox, but Dad, I don't have an Xbox. You do now.
Yeah, yeah,
Brilliant line, brilliant line. It's like
yeah,
you're
yeah.
grounded. I'm gonna have to take away your Xbox.
Mhm.
Great line in the
And,
entire
and
movie.
and
But
that's one of the things too, like with Temple High, like when you start seeing, because like I said, it's an interconnected universe, and I want people to feel like that. So there's gonna be times where there's gonna be like Parents' Day, and you're gonna see Alchemy and Fireblade there walking around with Damien, and it's gonna have that back and forth mother, father, son banter that they would only have, Um,
and it's gonna be wild. Like it's just gonna be crazy as it goes on. So
And the reason why I bring this up is
mhm,
because it's not so simple. I mean, if
mhm.
your parents are superheroes
Yeah,
and you have a power, or superheroes maybe not the right word, but they're powerful people,
yeah,
and or even if one of your parents is a Zenith and the other is not,
mhm,
or miraculously you're a Zenith and your parents aren't,
yeah,
and you're Hermione Granger.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and I think, I'm not out of line yet with
Mhm,
anything that could potentially happen. It raises really interesting questions because there's issues that if your parents don't have powers, but you do,
mhm,
how did that happen? What's the deal? Do they understand your culture?
mhm,
Also, what risk do you pose to them? What risk do they pose to you? And vice
mhm.
versa. And what happens if one sibling has it, one doesn't?
Right.
And then even going further, when there's a conflict going on and Damien's parents are getting their ass kicked and he's in school, that raises a
Yeah.
whole nother question
Like, does he
too.
leave and try to help his parents?
Or
Or
even how you deal with that. Or conversely, if everybody has this, and what happens if, you know, your best friend's mom is
mhm,
beating your dad up? It's
right.
like
Yeah,
they're
it's
the opposite sides. And
yeah.
now,
It's a
so
lot of stuff that comes from it, and it's funny that you're seeing all of that. That's the reason why I left that side open and didn't say something like,
oh, 90% of the people on the planet have powers, or this percentage. Like it left the door open so that you can look at it and be like, okay, he has this country for people with powers. Do you have all these people with powers, but there's normal people that live here and they're marrying, and okay, is it okay? Like what's going on? And to answer that question, actually, there's two students in Temple High who both their parents had no powers, but both of them came from different walks and in that did different things. So you have Sayala, right, which is she goes by the code name Venomous, and she's the one that likes Damien and stuff like that. And Damien kind of, he likes her too, but they haven't really. They're freshmen. They're gonna play back and forth before they finally get together. But like with her family, because she's this amphibious reptile type of phenosapien, when her mother had her, like her parents are very religious, so they thought that she was like the spawn of Satan. So they, of course, tried to kill her and stuff like that. And like when I say very religious, I don't mean just going to Easter Sunday. I mean like they were that borderline psycho religious. Yep, not borderline. So they were psychotically religious. So we'll just say that so people who are religious don't get offended. They were psychotically religious.
they were in the
So
cults.
exactly, right,
The
right,
way,
exactly.
right?
Yep. They were off their
Were,
rocker.
were, were they in Los Matos cult?
No, they weren't.
Yeah,
But the
you don't
thing
you
is,
don't
like,
get the reference. You don't get the
I
reference,
don't.
do
I
you?
don't. We're gonna have to talk about it. I don't. Don't beat
It's
me
a
up.
Resident
But
Evil 4 joke.
oh, okay. So but like with her, like her family had money. Like they're rich. Like she was born in a mansion and stuff like that. Rich. So she comes from long money. However, because of how her parents thought, they saw her and they instantly tried to kill her. First, they tried to stab her. It didn't work. The wound grew back. They tried to burn her. Didn't work. Flesh came back. Tried to drown her. She grew gills. Like there was nothing they can do to kill this child. So they just locked her away and hoped that she would just starve to death. But if anybody's ever had a snake before, snakes and reptiles and amphibians can go a very long time before without eating. So of course she was okay. Um, but the midwife started taking care of her. Um, she was like sneak off to take care of her and stuff like that. So she went through a lot of psychological abuse and all this other stuff. Both her siblings had no powers and her parents had no powers. Um, so she is saved and brought to Amandla so that she can go to Sorbonne Academy. Then you have Della, which is the heavyset, the character, the one that was laughing a lot and likes to have fun. You have her, and she actually comes from a poor family. And when her powers developed, like her parents accepted her for who she was. And whenever Amandla or the school actually came to bring her into the school, the first thing that came out of her mouth, because she came from a poor family, she was like, will there be jobs for my parents there? And they were like, yeah, your parents can come with you too. We will provide jobs for them. And so like hers was more of a happier type of situation. So that right there just goes to show you like the differences in things. Like you have two characters who were born with will have powers,
from different walks of life, treated differently by their parents. One was accepted, the other one was shunned. One brought her parents out of poverty, the other one just straight up left, her parents and stuff like that. So it's like, so you see a lot of that going around.
So to even talk about this, because obviously this is what makes Temple High very interesting too,
Mm-hmm.
is that you're in the world of Cypher Team. And so that's what makes this interesting, because there's connections to Cypher Team, but then they're also in their own world.
Yeah.
And it's the next generation. And it also can be, and it's not like it's not going from Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z to Dragon Ball Super next generation. It's not going from Naruto to Boruto generation, where this is taking place in real time. But this is where this gets fascinating. This is what I love about what you do, is this is building a universe. And they're not going to become Cypher Team tomorrow. But they can, or they could become their own team. And they can become the replacements. And so it's super interesting, because we get to watch these characters grow up. And so this is the NXT.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much. Yeah.
We need to bring William Regal back, and we'll be good. But anyhow, all jokes aside, though, but that's what makes this so interesting, is we're now going and you're building Generation 2. But we get to see it while Generation 1 is still active. And we also get to play out and see maybe, some of the characters that we love become the next generation of villains too. And why? Or maybe they become the anti-heroes, and maybe they're playing both sides. And this is what's so interesting, is that I find Temple High to be more interesting than Cypher Team, to be very honest, because this is what happens when you spin off a 6th title, a 7th title. Maybe we get a messed up bloodbath of an adult thing that is so brutal, and we get some Rhea Ripley, this is my brutality shit going on. And so that's what's so interesting about this. And so that's what I love about Temple High, is that I think Temple High does something that a lot of people in comics want to do, and they don't know how to do it, because you've taken IP characters, and then this is where the crossover stuff really happens. And so there's just so much, and I'm not going to press you too hard, because you can say whatever you want.
It comes with pre-planning. So I mentioned this before, but for those who are probably just listening and probably just meeting me for the first time, like, I've been writing this universe since 2007. So in a sense, it started with a title that I haven't even released yet. Like, this title, I can't release it right now, because if I release it, it will tell you the future of where all of these stories are going. So I was like, that has to be released closer to the end of this massive super arc, and the name of that title is Infinite Reign. You've read the comics, you probably heard Reign other than in Sovereign Comics, but you heard Reign before. So I'm pretty sure you've heard that name before. So it's called Infinite Reign. And pretty much it's about these twin sisters who are in this future, is a dystopian future. The villain won. Like, he's killed villains who wouldn't come to the side. And the reason why I'm telling y'all this is because it's time travel. Things change.
I'll just say that. But so, like, this villain won. Their mother's dead. I'm not gonna say who their mother is just yet. Their mother's dead. Their father's dead.
John Wick, guys. It's John Wick.
It's John Wick. John Wick took over everything. So it's like they're trying to figure out, because they know, they're like, hey, our parents were these super well-known, like, protectors, like these super well-known heroes. What happened to where they were so easily killed? So they the mother's best friend, her father created time travel, but they kept it on the low because they didn't want people going back and changing things. So there is a method for them to go back, and they use that method. They go back, and they kind of
find the Dragon Balls. To find the Dragon Balls.
Stick to the shadows. Yeah, they go back to find the Dragon Balls.
But so they're going back to see what happened. Yeah. so they go back to see what happened. And honestly, in that story, everything spun off from that story. So Cypher Team spun off from that story. Temple High spun off from that story. Stars spun off from that story.
And Yamo Stigmata did not. That one actually came to me when I was sitting on the couch. But the other three mains spun off from it. Stars was like, I was like, I could use real life music. I'm like, but wouldn't it be dope if I created my own band that's like this super international favorite? And that's what Stars came from. And there was Cypher Team. I had to find a team that their parents were on. So the girl's father is on Cypher Team. If you've been listening, you could probably put two and two together and figure out who their father is if you read the book. I know you're going to figure it out. You probably already know. I think we've talked about it. So you may already
exactly
know.
who was doing what and what they were doing.
So,
Let me put it this way. I'll give clues. They were sharing cookies.
Yep.
That's all I'm going to say. Yeah, that gives you an idea, doesn't it?
Yep. So you find out, I was like, okay, because at first I was like, is it just going to be a world where there's just heroes everywhere,
and they're just doing their things. And of course, me being military, I'm like, make it like more organized, like they have these
singular heroes. However, they have to go through training and have to sign up and all of this other stuff. Because you're going to find out about Stars, like they kind of get in trouble in these next couple of issues coming up. But, they have to do all of this so that they can be designated as the heroes of the area that they're in. So in building all of that, that's how I got everything.
So like, even with that, I was like, should I create a school where kids with powers can go to? And I did. And these characters are actually going to end up being at the middle school level of this school before everything pops off. So it's crazy because you're going to see them, and then all the stuff for the end, the super arc is going to pop.
I'm going to stop you because I don't want to ruin anything for anybody. But I do want to ask a very interesting question because it's no secret I'm a huge Zenescope fan, and what Zenescope is doing, and it's pretty obvious, is that they're building towards a massive event.
Yeah.
And I like to call the theory called critical mass theory, where everything goes into something and then everything explodes out. And, sometimes DC does it really well. Sometimes they don't. One of my favorite things that was critical mass theory in Green Lantern world was Wrath of the First, Rise of the Third Army and Wrath of the First. I thought was some of the best writing in DC in a long time. And it was going into those things. It was almost like 45 issues of brilliance between the Red Lanterns, the Green Lanterns, all the good Lantern stuff. Fantastic concept. But what is this like for you? Because that's what it seems like, is that we're inching towards what is a critical mass event, that then everything goes into that and then it shoots out. Because that's what I think, when you're just doing a series and it's a standalone series, you don't need a critical mass event. You need events to happen. You need consequences to happen. But when you have 4 titles going into something, it's okay that the first issue of Cypher for Team does not lead into that, but the second, third, fourth issue does need to lead into that.
Yeah.
And there needs to be hints. And so what is that like to write that? Because
it's fun in a sense, like because honestly, I already have
my arcs. So and I say that in this instance, like Temple High already have the arcs, like at least the titles for them and a short synopsis of each arc.
So I know what's going to happen in those arcs. And then as I get to them, I'm going to write each episode synopsis. So I've done that with the universe as a whole. So there are cross-title events. So one of the first cross-title events that we're going to get to is going to be called Obsidious. In issue 3, you're going to find out why it's called Obsidious. But we're going to get to this first cross-title arc, and that's going to be like the appetizer, or your water or your beer as you're waiting on the appetizer. And then you're going to get the next step. There's going to be another cross-title arc and another cross-title arc. But each story, each issue, each arc is all building to something. And that first cross-title arc is going to mention it. Is going to straight out say what's going to happen. I'm not going to tell you all, just because I like people to read. Like, read it, digest it, come and talk to your friends about it and say, this is what I got from it. I didn't get that. I got this. I want people to debate and talk about my stories. So that first cross-title arc is going to straight up mention it. It's going to harken back to something that happened in issue 3. It's going to mention it in that cross-title arc. And you're kind of going to know what's on the way. But it's massive. It's going to explode, because everything that happens there is going to change so much, because there's going to be so much fallout from it. People are going to be people aren't going to be trusted anymore. People are going to feel like they're stabbed in the back whenever this massive super arc happens. I don't want to give anything away because it's going to be big, and there's only a couple people that knows. There's only a couple people that knows what happened, and whenever I told them what was coming, they were like, "How dare you!" Like like it's big, it's massive. So.
It's going to be interesting. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm letting everybody know that, but I'm not going to push too much on that because I do want to back out of everything. Obviously, I think Temple High 1 is out. I think both issues of Cypher Team are out right now. I think issue 2 is getting finished up, and that's going to be out relatively soon.
Yep. Issue like if you follow me on my social medias, just find me at Sovereign Comics. Look for the orange lion head.
You're gonna have time. Don't worry.
That's why you always give time. But yes,
Temple High issue 2 will be out soon, and I'm gonna do pre-orders for that. So
but I do want to actually dive into something because you did leave crowdfunding. I know you're toying with the idea of coming onto Indiegogo and just releasing all the issue 1s for anybody who wants an issue 1. Maybe doing like a special edition or 2 potentially. But what is that like? Because one of the things that's always debated with people is some people don't trust Kickstarter. Some people don't trust Indiegogo. I am right now disappointed in Kickstarter because of accountability issues. And so I'm actually slowly backing out of it. And I'm also being a lot more selective. And I trust, my local comic shop because guess what? They're going to get me my book. But what is that like? Because there are people who will only use Kickstarter or Indiegogo and like, look, I want to support you, but I also don't trust your system per se because it's just a weird concept. So what is that like saying, hey, look, I understand that I'm not a huge fan of crowdfunding or I don't like them taking a percentage, but it also is an audience to some degree as well.
Yeah, like they do have their audiences. Kickstarter, Indiegogo both have their audiences, and things that I've thought about, even though fully removing myself from it, I have thought about in the past. I was like, maybe I can go back and do the trades and do like a Kickstarter for the trade. I've thought about that, and then I've also thought about even with Temple High issue 2 because I know there were fans who supported Temple High issue 1 and really loved it, and they supported it through Kickstarter. So I was like, well, it'd kind of be dope to bring Temple High issue 2 at least back to Kickstarter for those individuals who really liked it. But then I thought about it and I was like, they're all in my newsletter. So I can just like, hey, Temple High issue 2 is out. Hey, whoever wants to pre-order it, here's the link. Go pre-order. So the pre-order thing, what I like about it, and to me, I feel like it keeps me honest because now if I don't deliver, you don't have to worry about a company saying, oh, well, we can't do anything about that. I have to answer that. If I don't deliver, it is straight up on me. So that's one thing. Like if folks are wondering, well, how do I trust that? It's straight up on me. So if I don't deliver your stuff, it's straight up on me. Not to mention, my company is in the Better Business Bureau. So if I don't deliver, it's on me.
So, and that's one of the things that I tell folks whenever I'm pre-ordering, and they're like, well, why not do a Kickstarter? I trust the Kickstarter. I'm like, but you have that third party, you got individuals taking a percentage. So the more money I make, the bigger the percentage is. And with the percentages they be taking sometimes, I'm like, sheesh, I could have ordered another 50 freaking books with that. So if I get everything, vice the Stripe percentage or the transaction percentage, taxes and stuff like that, because you don't really get that, then I'm able to do more for the Chimera Kingdom, which is what I call the fans of the Silverse. I can do more for y'all because you're just dealing with me now rather than everyone else. But like I said, it keeps me honest. It does. Like, I'm not saying I'm gonna be dishonest. I've never have been because I really want folks to read these books. I love telling stories. I love hearing what people have to say about them. So I'm never not going to send you your book. You're going to get your book because I want to know what you think, even if you don't think it's that good or if you think it's great. I want to know. But in the same vein, it keeps me honest and it gives the supporter or the Chimera or the individual, an open channel to me, to where you just talk to me directly and be like,
hey, I got my book, but it came like this.
Interesting.
Now you don't have to worry about this messaging
I
system. You can just drop in my DMs. I'm like, oh, I'll send you a new one. You know, so
so this is really interesting because this is one of
Mhm.
the things that I think people have forgotten,
Mhm.
and you're starting to climb the ladder up. But
Mhm.
there are people in the indie comic community who I feel have their bridge has gotten a little too big for their water. Or the water's gotten a little too
Yeah.
big for their bridge. I forget the saying, but we all know
Yeah.
the saying.
Mhm.
And they're like, I'm not going to sign for free. And you're an
Yeah.
indie comic creator. You know what it is? It's kind of ridiculous. If I'm buying your book and you're not going
Mhm.
to sign your book for free, I mean, I think we got a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And I think that there's also this idea where people are signing deals and then they're putting out a lot of comics. They're putting out 8 to 12 books a year and they're getting
Mhm.
deals with places like Scout or Black Caravan or Second Sight
Mhm.
Publishing or Behemoth. And I think they've forgotten where they're
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm about to start essentially a financial, education company in
Mhm.
October, but I know exactly where I'm from.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what it means to earn a dollar and be broke and be poor.
Yeah.
Now, not poor. I've never been poor. I've been broke.
Mhm.
But poor is a state of mind and it's a lifestyle. Broke just means you have no money.
Exactly.
Um,
And like,
but my point is that I don't think, and I think that's something that really helps in business sometimes, is that at least I don't think you have forgotten yet where you're from. And I think that's a big
not
issue
at
right
all.
now.
Yeah, it is. A lot of people have forgotten. It's like they get big, get popular, get put in news articles, and they totally forget. I mean, but it happens. It happens a lot with folks. It really, to be honest with you, it really shows the character of the individual. Like I've been in articles, I've been interviewed, I've been on multiple podcasts. I've talked to people in Hollywood and things like that, but I still know where I'm at. That's why I can still direct how I want things to go. Like even at the last con, I sold well over 250 books, probably almost, yeah, well over 250 books. And um, I signed all of them for free, all of them for free. So, and that's how I am. Even on my Kickstarters, I always give people the option: do you want your book signed? Yes or no? Or I'll be like, yes, or I'll be like, no, yes, cover, yes, and side cover. And I always gave people the option. Never charge extra, just always give the option. That's just how I am. Now, if down the line, if Sovereign Comics says, we got like 7 movies out, then I might charge. It won't be like astronomical because clearly I'm getting paid from the movies. So I'm not gonna be like $75. I'm gonna be like, yeah, $5. Matter of fact, you know what?
You're a longtime fan. I'll do it for free. Like I probably will never break out of that because I mean, to me, it's like to me, in my eyes, that's more of a. I think that's where you're bridging, and here I am, uh, freaking self plugging my podcast kind of, but you're you're bridging the gap between the creator and the fan. A lot of people, if people really just sat there and paid attention to the fans, a lot of that stuff when you do things like that, especially if they're a big fan, it really makes them feel good. It also raises their trust in you. Like if you're like, they get a book and you're like, hey, you want me to sign that? And if they're like, oh, well, how much does it cost? So you don't got to worry about that. I sign for free. Like that warms people up. Like I've had people come to my table at cons, buy a book, I sign it. And because I didn't charge them, they'll go and get their friends and bring like 5 people back and all of them will buy up everything. Like I've quite literally had that happen. Um, even at the recent con. So, so it's like you have to,
It's funny.
I mean, what, yes, we're all here to make money, but if you look at McDonald's, you look at Nike, you look at Adidas, you look at Toyota, you look at all of these big brand name companies, they all have one thing in common: fans. They made people happy. Yeah, they're selling things, they're making money, but they made people happy. And those people are repeat customers.
It's funny in which that like I run an eBay store.
Mhm,
So I practice what I preach and I teach what I actually do in
mhm,
my class. And one of the things is that I try to combine shipping as much as humanly possible. So when I'm selling $300 to $400 with flexible comics,
Mhm.
it's $12 shipping.
yeah,
But somebody just bought 11 comics from me. Guess what? If they were to buy those separately, they'd have to pay 120 to like $140 worth of shipping. So they save so much money
Mhm.
just on the shipping alone. And then, I wound up insuring it. I wound up losing like $8 on the insurance.
Mhm.
But guess what? I made a big sale and they know that they're saving money.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. And then usually I include some bonuses. I got some
Mhm.
stuff left over from my Kickstarter. I include that in there. I include extra books. And so now all of a sudden, if somebody's like, oh man, you included like an extra book that was $5.
Mhm.
Oh, that's so nice of you. Like, who does that? And then you include a personal note, say, hey, really thank you for your business. Hope you
Exactly.
enjoy these books. You're going to a good home. And like, again, you're making somebody smile. When
Yeah,
somebody
exactly.
sends me a message and puts like a post-it note in a Kickstarter or even on an indie thing like, hey, really appreciate, you backing my book, Burning Hell, Andrew. I find it funny. I find it funny.
Yeah, I get you.
Not
Like,
that you bought my book, but the Burning Hell part.
yeah,
That's kind of fun.
yeah. It's like it's. I don't know. Like for me, like I will always have that humility. I remember I used to say it, and folks would be like, "Oh, he's the humble guy." Like my humility isn't a weakness. It's just that I really engage with the folks who engage with me. And whenever they go out of their way to spend their hard-earned cash on something that I did, something that came from this deranged creative mind, and they're like, I'm going to spend my money to buy that. I'm going to spend my money to buy these shirts. I'm going to spend my money to buy a $150 Letterman jacket. You know what I'm saying? Is like, because yeah, we're doing Letterman jackets for Temple High. So, like if they're saying this stuff and it's like, I'm looking at it like,
See,
wow,
that's
so to me, it's like it's always going to be a big thing, especially when they put it on their social media. I always go and comment. Like I've seen some folks, some creators, where somebody will post something like, "Yeah, I got this comic from such and such," and the person won't even comment on it. Like they'll tag them, the person won't come in and be like, "Yo, thank you for your purchase." None of that. It just they leave them. I always go in, "Thank you for your purchase. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much." But I've noticed a lot of people don't do that anymore. It's only some.
it's weird because, and look, I'm coming from a different angle, but like I'll interview somebody and I don't get a thank you. I don't get a message like, look, I'm going to be on a show tomorrow. And guy reminded me, and I knew I was going to be there.
Mhm.
And what did I say? I say, oh man, he said, yo, I'm super excited for you to come on. I'm like, yo, thanks for having me and thank you in advance.
Mhm.
Because you know what that does? That makes somebody be like, oh man, he's already thanking me and he wasn't even on yet.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to be on this guy's show. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a fun conversation. But the idea is that, I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Because I understand that thank yous go a long way.
Yeah. Appreciation goes a long, 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 long way. And if you always appreciate folks for their time and their money, your doors are going to open on their own. Just being honest.
I hope so. I hope you're right. Because is I say thank you and I say please a lot, and I hope for the best. But like I think it's a lost art, and I think a lot of people. I mean, I put up a post. I don't know if you saw the post that I put up on Facebook, but I said people in the comic industry have the worst soft skills.
Yeah.
And to my shock, I thought I was going to get beaten up for it. I got a lot of positive feedback on it.
Yeah, I saw it because a lot of them do. A lot of them, and the thing is too is like I think it's because a lot of folks are introverts or self-proclaimed introvert. Like I'm an introvert, but I'm also when I'm around good energy, I tend to open up. But I don't use it to be rude. Like a lot of people, I'm an introvert, and they use that to be rude. Like, why don't you talk to people? Why don't you think I'm an introvert?
I'm talking
about an introvert is
not
an asshole.
No, I'm going to challenge you on one thing on that.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times you could be an introvert, right? So let's say I interview, we have an interview. You can shoot me a message on Facebook and say, hey, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
There's no excuse. There's no excuse for that.
No excuse.
Because you don't have to tell me in person, thank you. But if you don't shoot me an email, because guess what? It's called typing something out. Yeah. I understand that some people, English is not their first language. I understand that. I understand people don't have good skills sometimes. I understand all that. But if you can't shoot me a DM on Twitter or Facebook thinking that you were on my show, you got a bigger problem. We got a bigger problem in this comic community.
Yep, exactly. Like, there should be no reason why folks don't, especially when you're on the show. Like, I know every episode that I've done, the folks that I've brought on have, and the crazy part is the folks that I've had on, which, you'll be on the show. Next week? Yeah, the week after next. Yeah. But everyone is thinking.
I can't do it next week because
I think
I didn't tell anybody who's coming on.
Yeah.
Next Wednesday.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's the week before. Not week before, but week after. Yeah. But anyway, like everybody's thanked me. And the crazy part is like a lot of them are friends that I talk to a lot. And guess what? They're friends. And guess what they still did? Thank you, Tier, for letting me come on the podcast. So it really doesn't take that much. And most people are like, friends thanking you? Like, yes. Like, I don't know. Maybe I have a different breed of friendship or a different breed of friends. But yeah, they all thank me, or appreciated the time or appreciated being on the podcast.
I
And
think my experience, and not to go too much into it,
Mhm.
but I think some people, what it is, they've gotten accustomed to certain things, and I just think that they don't appreciate media, and I think it's a big problem. But look, what it is, a lot of people I ask now at this point, and I'm going to be doing just fine. I mean, I got
Yep.
some pretty big heavy hitters coming,
No.
so
It's like you said. It's like you said earlier, and I guess it kind of goes full circle. Like you said earlier, there's a lot more people now that are takers, and that's just how a lot of people they're just what's good for them. That's what they feel they deserve. They're takers and entitled. Oh, that's a bad word because a lot of people don't feel they're entitled, but a lot of you are. I'm even entitled to some things.
What's
So
happened?
yeah.
Look what's happened. I mean, in season 2 of the show, I got solicited extensively,
Mhm.
and I think in January the word got out that people just stopped hitting me up, and you know what it is? I mean, I kind of whine and bitch about it to my mom sometimes, and I'm very honest about this. Where I'm like, it seems like other people have 10,000 interviews that are always coming, but I'm like, wait a second, I'm picking, and I'm being really selective, and I'm picking people who have interesting projects because I don't want to be a shotgun. I want to be a sniper rifle, and I know people are very sensitive about guns, but the point I'm making is that I don't want to shoot and have my bullets and have my ideas hit 15 different areas and do 16 interviews a week, and one of them or two of them are good. I want to pick and I want to make sure that everything that I'm hitting is precise and targeted for a good reason. I think that's where I've evolved into because, again, people feel they're entitled, and I think that people view this and they don't understand the work that goes into it.
Yeah. And that right there is a different type of growth. See, what you're trying to do, which is what I'm trying to do, is grow based off of quality. A lot of people want to grow based off of quantity. That's the reason why so many people, only thing they care about is follower count, how much money they made on Kickstarter. They'll straight up tell someone who's been in the game longer than them, well, I got, 20,000 followers. How many do you have? And it's like, that really has nothing to do with anything, especially if out of your 20,000, only 2 people respond to stuff.
Well, I'll give you a number. I'll give you a number. You know the channel Comic Crusaders?
Say that again. Crusaders?
Comic Crusaders.
No, I don't think so.
We're going to do an exercise right now. This is so relevant in so many ways. So if I told you, if somebody has 20,000 YouTube subscribers, what should their video count be per video? Just off the top of your head. Views.
If they had 20,000, roughly 10%. So I would say 10% will be the max. So I would say at least 2,000 views if they have 20,000 followers.
So
some people do better if they're better, but
they don't break on most videos over like 300 views initially, which means that they bought subscribers. They either alienated a bunch of people that said we're not going to unsubscribe, or that number is manipulated, right? And that's the whole problem with this entire game on follower count. I don't care about follower count. It's a little known secret that Mixum was a sponsor of me, and I returned over 10x on what they paid me. I don't have the followership number-wise that looks like that, but the reason why is I had everybody who needed their services in me, and it was a high-ticket item because it's comic printing. And so when they paid me X and I returned them north of 10K in business, I mean, that's what people don't understand is that it doesn't matter if you have 100 followers and 100 people who want your book, but they're spending $100
because that's the thing too. Like, because I've seen some folks who have like for instance, Comics Track, Tyler. He has like maybe I think maybe 1,000. I haven't seen it recently. I think the last time I looked at his page, I think he had like maybe 2,000, maybe 1,000. But that dude is always killing it. So the follower count doesn't matter. It's like if you like here's the thing. What matters to folks most? Having 20,000 followers with only 200 supporters, or having 2,000 followers with 2,000 supporters. Like for me, I would rather have the 2,000 followers with the 2,000 supporters. With the 2,000 individuals, like all of my followers are supporting me. That's why, like, even with me, like I'm at 2,000 on Instagram right now, but I have well over like 400 people that are always buying stuff. So that's what matters to me.
I stopped even worrying about that and my follower count, because what I figured out is that I just market like crazy, and I just know how to hashtag things, and I know how to do that, and it'll all work out in its own realm. And so at this point, it's growing slowly, but it's working, and that's my whole thing.
You keep pushing and pouring your heart into it, and remember why you're doing it. Like, and I'm saying that because I've had to say that to myself. Remember why you're doing it. And I actually sat down and reread some of my comics, which I hadn't done in a while, and I was just sitting there reading them, and I'm like, this is why you're doing this. Like, sometimes you got to remind yourself why you're doing it.
It's weird in which that also, it's no secret that I'm moving into the comic book investing world anyway. Doesn't mean I'm not going to be doing this, but I know where I'm going to make my real money, and I know exactly where I'm going to make my real money, and it's not necessarily in podcasting, and it's in comic book investing. It's financial literacy, financial education, and investing. And I'm already making a good amount of money in comics and buying and selling them. And now I want to teach people, because that's just another venue, and I'm an expert in that area. So I know, but the way my show is going and what works in my show is very different. Thursday is a big deal. I'm going to plug that really quickly. I have the voice of Jinbei that was pre-recorded. That's actually going to be airing, and nobody's seen that interview. And then not tomorrow, I have Tommy Bell coming on tomorrow. But on the 24th, I have the Bushwhackers, WWE legendary team Bushwhackers coming on. And then on the 30th, I have Chambers coming on. So
is that the 24th, the Bushwhackers will be on? Okay, I got to put that in my calendar.
so that's going to be super exciting. I obviously have voice actor Jinbei. That's going to be released Thursday. So that's going to be fun. And then I have Danny Chambers, who's another voice actress, and she's great. And then I got a few other people, surprises coming on. So I'm just saying that big things are coming. But I do want to ask you one more question, because I'm very curious before I give you a chance to self-promote yourself. Where do you see the futures of cons going? Because there's been a lot of discussion and debate and even selling. And some people say, hey, look, I want to sell at non-comic events like flea markets and things like, I have a music tied to my thing, so I want to go to my local musical fest, and I even want to go to concerts and sort of like jam-pack stuff in that realm. And other people are like, look, I want to just stay online, and then I want to just upgrade my Shopify store and be aggressive in that front. And some people say, look, the cons are where they're at. But where do you foresee all of it going?
I see cons continuing to grow. It seems like every month there's a new small con that pops up. With that being said, I know a lot of people like to go to these humongous cons and try to get tables and booths at these big cons. I think the bigger cons are going to go more along like San Diego Comic Cons, New York Comic Cons, the really big ones.
I think they're going to go more corporate?
Yeah, they're going to go more corporate and concentrate more on movies and pop culture. That's just what they're going to be. If you're a comic book seller and you're indie, you'll make some sales. I'm pretty sure. People can find your table because those cons are huge. But I think you'll make sales. But I think for the indie person, and I'm not telling any indie creator what to do. If you're listening, make your own choice. But I think the smaller cons is where we're going to make our money at, and not just seeing that personally. So
let me ask you a question. What is a smaller con? Because I'll give you. Let me preface this. So there's a con in the Hudson Valley that maybe will cater to 2,000 people, and it's a Comic-Con. They're bringing an anime person. My friend Jay Moores is going to be up there, and I might go because it might be fun for a day. It's like 2 days. Tickets are $23. So it's a fun time. If you bring $100, you're not going to find like a $9,000 comic there. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
Right.
you could find something. So is that a small con, or is it
To me,
something like
in my
10,000?
eyes, that would be a smaller con. Would be around 2,000 people. And I know a
So
lot of because when you look at San Diego Comic Con and New York Comic Con, I think when you start crossing 10,000 people there, when you start crossing the 10,000 number, to me, you're starting to get towards the big con area. But like
So I'll
2,000
throw
people.
another
Mhm.
caveat, because I used to live in DC and I thought Awesome Con was decent for indie people.
Yeah.
Where I thought that they obviously have 30 to 35,000 people, but I view that as somewhat of a small con. It's also
Really?
spacious, and so
Okay.
I thought that was a good indie con. Where
Mhm.
and it's not small, but I thought it was medium size.
Mhm.
Where
Well, see for them, like with Awesome Con, are they niche? Because I know some of these cons too. That's the reason why I say I think a lot of cons, the cons are going to keep growing. You're going to keep seeing them pop up. Because what I also noticed is like a lot of cons are doing niche type stuff. Like you'll have a con, they be like, we're strictly indie. Like we might have somebody who works in mainstream come as a guest, but we're strictly in support of indie. Like you were saying, Awesome Con. There's another con that I know about that's the same way.
so
Then you
Awesome
have
Con is not strictly indie. They just do
okay,
everything. They do
okay.
everything. So like they've had
Because I
Stan Lee, and then they have
okay.
like Eden, and then they have wrestlers, and they got
Mhm.
everything. And so, but they're also not catering to like 200,000 people. You know what I
Okay.
mean? They're
Right.
catering to like 35,000. It's also Washington D.C., so it's
Yeah.
a different crowd. Where Washington D.C. is a very young professional crowd, and
Okay.
so people have money in D.C. You also got Tyson's Corner, and then also
Mhm.
D.C. is centrally located, where you're bringing people from West Virginia and Maryland, and if because going up to New York, it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah. That's the reason
From
why I said
DC.
that's why I said if I ever went to New York Comic Con, like if I ever was fortunate enough to get a booth, I'm not even trying. I'm flying. I'm just gonna send my stuff, get a plane, and just get a freaking cab every time or Uber. I am not driving. No way. But yeah, like so those numbers, like I agree with you, like the 30,000 area, that to me, that's a medium con, you know. And medium cons will work, of course. But like I said, I think when you start getting real big, when those numbers start hitting, you know, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90,000 people plus, I think the focus changes a little bit because we know why a lot of those people were there. A lot of them are there to either find out some of the news about geek culture or the movies that they like, or to see a famous person who's like superstar level famous rather than just famous or known, you know. And that's when things
It's
kind of change a little bit, I think.
it's kind of
So,
like when at Awesome Con they had Dave Bautista and they had
mhm,
everybody from Guardians. So
mhm,
there were people there that was cool and it was awesome, but people were just there for that. But
mhm.
and look, is econ economics is a whole different discussion, and that's like a 9-hour lecture.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
and,
because there's so much that can go into that. There's so much that can go into that. Yeah.
like this is my space. Like I understand everything about this space. I
Yeah.
understand the whole guarantees, and I mean I have an article on my website how breaking down where your con ticket goes.
Mhm.
Nobody's read that article, and the second you read that article, you're like, I'm paying to go shopping at the mall. That's
Pretty much.
exactly what that is, and I'm like, that if I get a panel at New York Comic Con talking about comic book investing, that is the opening line. It's going to be brutal. I'm going to make everybody feel really stupid. And I'm going to say, look, I got 35 minutes to reprogram your brain. So we
Yep.
start now. The rest of your
Yep.
day and the rest of your life starts today, everybody.
That's honestly brutal truth. That is what it is. You're paying to go shopping at the mall.
So now that I got me in trouble, you in trouble, and
I'm
me and
always
Joe
in trouble.
Rogan.
I'm like Bruce Banner now. Like I'm in trouble so much that I just keep myself there, so it doesn't feel
Well,
shocking when it
I'm just
happens.
going to let everybody know that I'm going to be getting a sleeve on both arms. I'm going to be shaving my head. And
I'm not shaving my head no time soon.
become miniature Joe Rogan. It's all right, everybody.
Oh man.
But anyway, I do want to give you a chance to self promote. yourself before you never come back on my show ever again.
Oh no,
It's
I'll
not,
be back.
it's not you, it's me. It's me, I promise.
No, I'll definitely be back. Got my name Tier. I'm the owner of Sovereign Comics. You can find me on Instagram at Sovereign Comics. Look for the orange and purple Chimera, the logo. I'm also on Facebook under the same name, Sovereign Comics. Same deal. Look for the orange and purple Chimera. I am on TikTok also. Same thing, Sovereign Comics. I have a YouTube channel, Sovereign Comics. Again, look for the orange lion head, orange chimera head. The thing up there too on my YouTube, I do have a new show, a new podcast called The Bridge, where my co-host is Scorpio. So first Scorpio Manning, he is my co-host. We actually have a show tomorrow where we invite creatives on or individuals who are good in their field to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of creating. So it gets pretty in depth. It's a no holds barred show because I want everybody to be honest. It's not meant to dissuade folks from going into the creative life. It's more meant to make you privy to some of the things that are going on, because I believe that a lot of people don't tell the truth. A lot of people just tell you the good things, but there's a lot of
nobody would lie. How dare
yeah.
that?
So it really gets you used to the knee scrapes and stuff like that of it. Let's see where else. Oh, and I do have a Patreon also, same name. Actually, over there it's called the Chimera Kingdom. So if on Patreon, if you want to support, I do have some very dope tiers. Some of the higher ones, you get like a free comic every month. I do a quarterly T-shirt. I actually have a yearly graded comic. So if you're on some of the higher tiers for a year, you will get a graded comic. I also producer freaking credits on books. There, you have to go look. There's a lot of goodies. There's a lot of goodies over there on my Patreon. So yeah, that's me. If you want to see what's going on with the Silververse, want to check out the stories, you can also stop at my store, my store, shop.sovereigncomics.com. And there's everything in there: apparel, comics, digital comics, if that's more your thing, physical comics, posters. Yeah, there's a lot. But yeah, that's all.
and so
I'm looking at your comment. The comment says left over here.
If y'all are still out there, I see your comments.
okay, I think.
I think Andrew might have lost connection for a little bit. He will be back. Oh, there he is. Yeah, you froze for a little bit. Oh.
Oh no, this is not good. Am I back?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you're back. You're back now. You're back. Trust me. I know how you feel.
So as I was saying, and I'm gonna keep saying it, I've been saying it for a long time. If you like something, you need to support it. And what that means is, however somebody wants to essentially make money, whether that's buying books, backing a Kickstarter, an Indiegogo, a crowdfunder, backing a Patreon, just buying from them directly, DMing them, buying them a coffee at Patreon. I've already said Patreon twice. You need to support it with money, because it does mean something, and comics do not get produced both mainstream and indie without economic support.
Yeah.
This stuff isn't cheap to make, and so every dollar goes into it, and it also goes into profit and keeping the lights on, buying supplies, and put towards that book and the next book. And so it does make a huge difference. But look, if money is tight, and I'm the first person to say this because I am going back to school, so I am watching my pennies. and I'm not going to be living in a cardboard box, so nobody get worried about it. Maybe I should have said that, and all you would have had to go and gave me a lot of money, and paid my rent for a few months. But anyway, I'm not. I have a roof over my head, but money is tight, and so one of the things is that if you're in a situation like I am, one of the things that you should be doing though is sharing things out. Whether that's a tweet, whether that's following somebody on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and liking something, sharing it out, leaving a comment, because it does make a huge difference as well.
It does.
And again, if money's tight and you're in that situation, that is a big thing. Also, being on a newsletter, that's another big thing. It does make a difference. And so I really do recommend that people, at least at the minimum, engage on social media. And if you can, try to pick up a book. If you have the extra funds, and give it a try. It may or may not be for you. I can't promise because I don't know you. But all I can say is that if you buy a book for $5 or $6 and you don't like it, look, that's a price of going to Dunkin' Donuts or going to Starbucks. And so, take the risk and just become
exactly. And this is the thing too. I think a lot of people, they'll get like, even if you don't like something, because there's been things that I've read that I didn't like, or books that I saw that I felt like I wouldn't benefit me, but I've shared it because I know if I don't like it, it doesn't mean that everyone doesn't like it. Somebody's gonna like it somewhere. So I've done that. I'm not telling folks to do that, but I've done that in the past.
I encourage people to share things out. And look, I'm going to say something that is a little tricky. I would vet somebody and do a little research if you're going to share something out, because there are weird things that happen in comics. And there are certain people in the comic realm you need to be very aware of. And they're obvious. But again, if you're just, man, this book looks cool, I'm a Mecha fan, I just don't have any money, you don't have to vet everything out, but you should do some vetting if you're going to share a lot of projects.
Because you never know you never know who the person is or what they're,
I digress.
Yeah.
You got to watch out for Pat Chan. No, that's all I'm going to say. Pat Chan, he's dangerous. Pat Chan is a friend. That's why I said it. It's like Raven Gregory. Yeah, you really got to watch Raven. Raven's a fun basket to have on your show. Is all I'm going to say. But I digress right there. I'm going to quickly promote who I am and everything I do. Obviously, I got a lot of stuff going on. So I got my T-shirt. It's on Redbubble. Legitly 16 different colors. If you're a fan of Gundam, you're a fan of the most interesting man in the world, Fallout, Taco Bell, you can go buy my shirt. It's on Redbubble, 16 different colors, long sleeve, short sleeve. You get it in a mini skirt if you so choose. Somebody wants to put this on their ass, I am totally in approval of it. This is a remnant from my Kickstarter. They're for $15. There's only 129 of them. DJ sold a bunch of them at Wizard World, and DJ is a rising cosplayer, so we did this. This will not be reprinted at all. So once I'm out of mine, and I think he's somewhat done with his, we might do another design at some point together, but they're super cool in that regard. So you can pick those up on my eBay. And then I have this up there as well. This is actually limited to 50. So this is super, super cool in that regard. So you could check that out too. And those are metal cards. So they're actual metal. They're pretty cool. And they're trading card size. So definitely check that out. And that's what's going on. And then on top of that, I have Buy Me a Coffee. If you would like to support me, it's Buy Me a Coffee. $5, $10, $100. It's all up to you. Nobody has to support what I do. It's just if you feel inclined to. And I'm probably not going to run a Kickstarter for this show this year, but I probably will run one again at some point. I may or may not, but I am thinking about doing a cool project sometime in July. And then obviously October 5th, my class fully comes out on Udemy, or if you want, it's going to be on Substack and Locals, and you can pay a monthly premium essentially for it of $5 to $6, maybe $7. I don't really know how much I'm going to charge per se, but you could get it in installments of every 2 weeks. Plus, any new class that I build will be on those platforms first, so that everybody who backs it there gets those classes. And I have so many class ideas coming, and I am actually 50% done recording.
Nice.
And so that class is going to be finished recording probably in the next 3 weeks. And fun stuff. And the basic premise is research, budgeting, grading, and exits is the class. And we teach the fundamentals. We're looking at 22 hours, give or take. So it's an intense class. But I promise you, I can't promise you'll make money with my class, but you will get a skill upgrade. So if you're looking to get into this space and you're looking to upgrade your skills and learn a lot about that, that's for you. But enough about me. Appreciate everybody watching, and I'm going to give you the final word.
Thank you for everybody who dropped in and watched. I was looking at the comments because I didn't know that I could view the comments tab. So I was looking at your comments, and definitely want to thank Chimera Kingdom if y'all are still out there. Thank you for dropping in and supporting. This is what I'm talking about. Like stuff like that. Like it's all about building a fan base. I mean, you have to build those. You have to get that group of individuals who are very supportive. So I'm always humbled and overly excited to know that there are folks out there reading my crazy freaking stories and loving them. So, but yeah, well, that's it for me.
I think that's the best place to end, everybody. And that is a wrap.